If there's one thing we love watching, it's medical chaos on TV. We get hooked on the endless romances of Grey's Anatomy or the grumpy genius of Dr. House. But recently, another doctor managed to stand out and win over the public in a very different way, with innocence and some seriously impressive surgical skills. We're talking about The Good Doctor. The show follows Sean Murphy, a young surgeon with autism and savant syndrome who sees the world and his patients' organs as if they were 3D diagrams floating in the air. But don't be fooled into thinking this is just another hospital drama. At its core, this story is about prejudice and about a protagonist who has to prove himself every single day while almost everyone around him expects him to fail. And the writers don't hold back. There's heavy grief, a complicated dynamic with Dr. Glassman, and that on-again, off-again romance with Leah that makes you want to yell at the screen. In short, it's a full-blown emotional roller coaster. So get ready, because today, we're diving deep into the complete journey of The Good Doctor. In the dead of night, Sean Murphy follows an almost robotic ritual. He parts his hair, messes it up, and walks an imaginary line that sends him into a painful flashback of bullying and his brother Steve, the only one who ever stood up for him. The airport's chaos is sensory torture for him until the chaos gives way to tragedy. A boy named Adam collapses, bleeding. A doctor tries to help, but only makes things worse. Then, out of nowhere, Sean takes control. He announces he's a surgical resident and corrects the procedure on the spot.
Dr. Sean Murphy. I'm a surgical resident at San Jose St. Bonaventure Hospital.
Meanwhile, at St. Bonaventure Hospital, the board debates whether or not to hire Sean. Dr. Andrews, the VP, boils him down to a label, artistic. But Dr. Glassman, his Mr. Miyagi-like mentor, is betting everything on the boy he's known since he was 14. Back at the airport, Adam's condition worsens. Sean asks for a sharp knife, scaring everyone, and gets tackled by security. But he doesn't give up. He improvises a one-way chest valve from airport trash, like a MacGyver of medicine, and saves the boy. At the hospital, resident Claire stops him at the door, treating him like a nobody. But when Adam's surgery gets complicated, they call him in. Sean glances at the scan, and like a diagnostic superhero, spots the anomaly no one else saw. By now, a video of him at the airport has gone viral, and Glassman puts his own job on the line, promising to resign if Sean isn't brilliant. When asked to speak, Sean recounts how he couldn't save his pet rabbit or his brother. Now, he wants to be a surgeon to give others what he lost, and maybe buy a TV. The speech works, and he finally enters the operating room.
I have a lot to learn from you.
Melendez begrudgingly accepts him on the team with the most humiliating phrase possible: "You're on suction." Sean's phone is the stage manager of his life. It dictates when to wake up, exercise, and shower. But not even technology can stop him from being late on his first official day and dropping a truth bomb on a patient. "You're not going to walk." Obviously, he gets an epic chewing out from Melendez and is relegated to scut work. The tensest case is Stephanie, a woman with a massive tumor. Sean, filterless, blurts out, "It's malignant and it's going to kill you."
Has a sarcoma, a malignant tumor.
Malignant?
It's definitely malignant. If it weren't malignant,
Please
then...
stop saying malignant.
Should we talk outside?
Jared tries to school him on how not to be a filterless robot, but it's no use. Glassman is furious when he sees Sean being treated like a janitor. Meanwhile, Claire makes a dangerous promise to Stephanie. She'll be alive for her son's wedding. Sean examines a little girl named Martine, and his instincts tell him something is very wrong, but Melendez forbids him from ordering more tests. In Stephanie's surgery, the tumor is a dead end. Sean, who was just there as window dressing, comes up with the brilliant idea that could save her, but who gets the credit? Jared, the opportunist. Melendez, pressured by Claire's promise, agrees to the crazy plan. In parallel, Sean ignores orders, sends the girl's blood for analysis on his own, takes a cab, and barges into her house, warning her she might not survive the night. Her parents find her unconscious. At the hospital, he performs an emergency procedure with the timing of an Avenger and saves Martine. The chief acknowledges his feat, but sends him right back to suction. Meritocracy at St. Bonaventure seems to be a bit bugged. A motorcycle accident brings the hope of a liver transplant. In his personal life, Sean meets his neighbor, Leah, who shows up asking for batteries and mysteriously disappears, leaving a question mark hanging in the air. At the hospital, Melendez preps the patient, Chuck, while Claire and Sean are tasked with the organ delivery. What was supposed to be a helicopter mission turns into a forced road trip due to a storm. Meanwhile, Andrews, the eternal rival, tries to operate on a wealthy donor and nearly messes up, forcing him to swallow his pride and ask Melendez for help. Chuck's case collapses when he confesses to drinking a glass of champagne. For the committee, that's enough to take him off the transplant list. On the road, the police car's flashing lights trigger flashbacks of Sean's brother's death. To make matters worse, the cooler keeping the liver viable conks out. In a moment of pure genius, Sean saves the organ with ice from a slushy machine. Along the way, he notices something wrong with the scans, opens the cooler, and finds a blood clot. On the side of the road, he and Claire perform microsurgery and bring the liver back to life. They save the organ, but the news is bitter. The liver isn't going to Chuck. Back home, Sean knocks on Leah's door, asks for his batteries back, and finally introduces himself. One small step for man, one giant leap for Sean's humanity. A simple leak in the ceiling turns Sean's night into a nightmare. He panics because he needs a specific screwdriver and ends up calling Glassman in the middle of the night. At the hospital, it's a different kind of chaos. Barb, a pregnant patient, has a tumor nearly the size of her baby. Melendez, the pragmatist, suggests the safest option, terminate the pregnancy, but she and her husband refuse. Sean and Claire start thinking outside the box, which irritates their boss. As punishment, Melendez sends them to deal with a boil in the ER, except the boil is actually a tumor on an adult film actress named Olivia, threatening her sensory nerves. During Barb's surgery, her heart fails. The only remaining plan is straight out of a movie: stop her heart intentionally to operate on the baby safely, then restart everything, and it actually works. At the same time, Sean has one of his signature flashes of genius and figures out a way to remove Olivia's tumor and save all her nerves. 2 huge risks, 2 home runs. After so much tension, Jared and Claire drag Sean to a bar, a rare night off after a day of saving lives in impossible ways. A father-son reunion ends badly. The father, Merrill, collapses. The teen thinks it's a pancreas issue, but the real enemy is in his brain. Tapeworms. Glassman, a former neurosurgeon, takes the case. Sean's world is turned upside down when he meets Evan, a boy who is the spitting image of his late brother, Steve. It's like seeing a ghost. Obsessed, he insists on a CT scan and finds a tumor. The shock comes when he discovers the parents already knew and were hiding the truth from their son, which completely messes with Sean's moral compass. Haunted by flashbacks of Steve, he decides Evan has the right to know the truth. With a hint from Glassman that borders on rule breaking, Sean tries to run a test behind the parents' backs, but gets caught red-handed. With no other choice, he tells the boy everything, and, as if fate were a sadistic scriptwriter, Evan starts coughing up blood right then and there. The surgery reveals the worst possible news. It was cancer, and it had already spread. Sean was wrong. Utterly devastated, he stays by Evan's side, who thanks him for his honesty. That night, Sean reads the same book he gave Steve, and leaves the room in tears. A wedding bus flips over and the ER descends into pandemonium. In the midst of the storm, Sean improvises a piece of equipment and pulls a patient back from the brink of death, impressing Glassman.
BP stabilizing, 90/60.
But Melendez remains skeptical. The dramas multiplied. A woman with a burned face, Tellez, the groom Marco with a crushed leg, and a patient searching for her missing wife, Jenna. Jared takes Celis's case, who sees herself as a monster. He chases down a bizarre, experimental treatment using tilapia skin and pays for it out of his own pocket. Meanwhile, Marco faces amputation until Claire and Sean suggest a sci-fi solution, a titanium femur. The decision turns into a family drama, with the parents pitted against the fiancé. Claire, unable to let Jenna's disappearance go, goes looking for her, finds her in the woods, and performs an emergency surgery on the spot, drilling into her skull to relieve the pressure. For a minute, she's the hero of the day, but the glory is short-lived. Glassman later points out a simple mistake she made that cost the patient her life. In the end, the titanium leg works, the tilapia skin offers hope, and Claire ends the day crushed by the weight of a fatal mistake. Sean is eyeing a TV in a store window. Glassman checks on Claire, still grieving the patient she lost, and schedules therapy for her. In the ER, Glenn, an elderly man whose pacemaker is failing, shows up. Sean, with his usual tact, states, 73 years old, no chance of a transplant, end of the line. Melendez corrects him instantly. Suddenly, an alarm goes off and Claire freezes, blaming it on too much coffee. Another patient arrives in crisis, Liam, an aggressive boy. Sean recognizes it immediately. It's not psychosis, it's autism.
You're scaring him. He's not psychotic, he's autistic.
He manages to calm the boy, who sees a reflection of himself in Sean. Jared notices Glenn has disappeared. Claire tries to sedate Liam for the scans, but he has an allergic reaction. The case is more serious than it looked. Sean promises to find the cause of the problem, even without an MRI. Jared finds Glenn. He broke his own pacemaker, tired of suffering alone. Jared simply sits with him. Sean discovers the cause of Liam's issues: herbal supplements. Though grateful, the parents bar Sean from the room until Liam himself asks for him. In the OR, Sean locates the perforation and stands perfectly still until they save the boy. In another room, Jared holds Glenn's hand until his heart stops after the device is turned off. That night, Claire breaks down in Jared's arms, and Sean and Glassman watch the TV in the store window, planning what their Super Bowl will look like. Leah barges into Sean's apartment to complain about his loud music, which got her power cut by the landlord. She steals a bite of his apple and storms out. To replace the fruit, Sean goes to the store and ends up in the middle of a nightmare: a robbery. A customer is shot, and so is the robber. In the ER, the victim's boyfriend, Brandon, points at Sean. It was his fault. Melendez sends Sean home, but he refuses to leave. The victims, Avery and Nash, go into separate surgeries. Seeing the Nazi tattoos on Nash's body, Claire refuses to treat him. Dr. Lim removes her from the room. Later, Lim forces her to care for him, an abusive, violent opioid addict. Avery's surgery is just the beginning. The next 24 hours are critical. Brandon, the boyfriend, is panicking and barely knows her. It was their first date. Sean detects renal failure, and it's another race against time. Jared bets on internal bleeding, Melendez agrees, but the bleeding just vanishes. No one sees it. Sean stands in silence, visualizes the bullet's trajectory in his 3D mind, and points to the exact spot. Bingo, Avery is saved.
The bullet nicked the left supreme intracostal artery. The wall has blown.
How do you know?
Elsewhere, Nash's condition worsens, and Claire, without Lim's supervision, performs an emergency procedure and saves the life of the man she hates most. In the end, Avery wakes up, Brandon gets a second chance, and Sean finds Leah to confess his mistake. She says nothing, just hugs him.
Please put down.
Leah finds a woman leaving Sean's apartment. It was just a cleaning lady candidate he turned down because her outfit didn't match. "You dork," she says, and drags him outside. At the hospital, Allegra announces an elite humanitarian program, and the patient of the hour is Gabriel, a little boy from the Congo with a shattered heart. Melendez thinks he was chosen for the cute factor, and that the surgery is impossible. Meanwhile, Claire deals with Elizabeth, a podcaster who might lose her voice, but her biopsy results have vanished. Sean, however, is more focused on Leah. He asks Claire for a crash course in flirting and starts analyzing every pickup line he overhears in the hallways. Gabriel's case worsens, and his mother keeps time with her son's heartbeat on a drum. Looking at a Mr. Potato Head toy, Sean has an epiphany and envisions a way to fix Gabriel's heart like a puzzle. Melendez thinks it's absurd until Gabriel's mother confesses she stopped giving him his medication, afraid that if he got better, they'd be sent back to the Congo. Touched by her story, Melendez agrees to the high-risk surgery. The teen practices on a 3D model, and the patient dies, but they decide to proceed. In the OR, Gabriel's heart starts beating again, and Elizabeth, who didn't have cancer after all, thanks Claire for finding the swapped sample. That night, Sean tries to flirt with Leah, calling her sweater absurd. She smiles, offers him an apple, and invites him in. Bobby, a professional gamer, has completely destroyed the ligaments in his arm from playing too much. While Sean and Jared treat him, Claire operates with Dr. Coyle, a guy who walks the fine line between charming and predatory. Glassman tries to push Sean into therapy. He freaks out and hides in the janitor's closet. Bobby, the gamer, notices that Sean is treated like a rookie and encourages him to stand up for himself. Sean suggests a test. Melendez says no. Jared repeats the same idea. Melendez says yes. The result is a bombshell: cancer. And worse, it's not the first time. Bobby hid the diagnosis to spend his last months doing what he loves: gaming. Meanwhile, Coyle's charm turns into harassment. Claire rejects him. Jared downplays the situation, and she explodes, explaining that if she reports him, her career is over. Bobby agrees to a surgery that will save his life but destroy his career by paralyzing his arm. His courage inspires Sean to confront Glassman. The argument escalates. Sean loses control, punches his mentor, and runs off. Fueled by rage, Jared goes after Coyle and assaults him. He's fired on the spot. The episode ends with Sean missing, and Glassman terrified he'll never come back. Sean is hiding under Leah's bed. Glassman knocks on the door, looks for him, but leaves without finding him. Leah finds him and decides the best cure is a road trip. They take off in her grandpa's car, a cherry red classic. At the hospital, the team faces a daunting case, separating conjoined twins, Jenny and Katie. Glassman, desperate, lies to Andrews, telling him Sean had a family emergency. On the road, Leah becomes the trip's DJ, creating a soundtrack for Sean's memories. He tells her about Steve, about Glassman. When he takes the wheel, he nearly loses control, but Leah calms him down. Back at the hospital, Jenny's heart fails, forcing the separation, but Katie panics and backs out. At a roadside bar, Leah gives Sean his first drink and convinces him to sing karaoke. He sings happily off-key. At the hotel, they share a kiss, followed by him vomiting. Claire, back at work, corners Coyle. Either he helps her get Jared rehired, or she exposes all his harassment victims. The twins' surgery is a success. Sean's trip, however, ends with a gut punch. Leah is moving to Hershey. He takes the bus back, alone. Sean's escape is over, but his problems are just beginning. Sean returns with a plan. Quit his job and follow Leah to Hershey. Glassman is devastated. At the hospital, the conjoined twins case becomes an emotional roller coaster. Jenny wakes up, but Katie falls into a coma. Jenny's only chance is to receive Katie's heart. The mother consents, until suddenly, Katie stabilizes. The plan changes. Reconnect them so one can support the other. Meanwhile, Jared hires a lawyer, gets his job back, but loses Andrew's respect, who accuses him of playing the race card. Claire advises Glassman to support Sean instead of controlling him. He then signs the recommendation letter but makes a deal. If Sean stays, he'll give him space. Leah is direct with Sean. He needs to build his own life, not follow hers. At the hospital, the reconnection works and Katie wakes up, but Jenny soon starts draining her strength. The only way out is to separate them again. Jenny's heart can't take it, and she dies in her sister's arms. Amidst the tragedy, Melendez and Jessica end their engagement. Sean decides to stay. He returns the letter to Glassman. Leah says goodbye with a kiss and a baseball, which Sean places next to Steve's photo. It's time to move on, but alone. The planned breakfast with Glassman never happens. Sean feels the weight of their new distance. At the hospital, it's the usual chaos. Claire and Lim try to save a man with an aneurysm while his family implodes in the hallway. Nadja, Sean's patient, has burns and chest pain, but her tests show nothing. In the middle of her surgery, Melendez makes a rare mistake and punctures her bronchus, causing a hemorrhage. Sean, ever observant, wonders if the stress from his breakup with Jessica is affecting his boss. He finds ethanol in Nadja's system and forms a wild theory. She's a terrorist making chemical weapons. Melendez shuts him down immediately, reminding him that accusations like that destroy lives. Claire uncovers the aneurysm family's secret. The wife was refusing surgery because her husband was abusive. She just wanted their son to have one last good memory of his father. As it turns out, Nadja wasn't a terrorist. She was making homemade perfume. Jared, defying Melendez, changes her medication and saves her life. But the hardest blow for Sean comes from Glassman, who explains that part of their giving space agreement means they can no longer be friends. Sean returns to his empty apartment, sees a new tenant has already taken Leah's place, and buys a pine-scented air freshener to try to turn longing into a scent. Sean's new neighbor, Kenny, walks into his apartment without asking and acts like he owns the place. At the hospital, a new resident arrives to shake things up. Morgan Resnick, a born competitor with no time for friends. Dr. Lim decides to spice up the routine and issues a challenge. Team Lim, Sean and Jared, versus Team Melendez, Claire and Morgan. The prize? Priority in the OR. Sean and Jared treat Quinn, a teenager with abdominal pain who identifies as a girl. Sean freezes, stumbling over pronouns. On the other side, Melendez's team deals with Howard, a professor with a superbug he cultivated himself through self-medication. Morgan, showing her true colors, steals Claire's credit. Quinn's case turns out to be far more complex. Testicular cancer. Sean suggests removing both testicles, and the grandmother accuses the parents of abuse for supporting their granddaughter. The competition ends with Melendez's team winning, although the life-saving idea came from Claire. Sean's arc, however, is quiet and powerful. After listening to Quinn, he corrects himself and begins referring to her using female pronouns. That night, he floats in the pool, honoring his promise of distance from Glassman. "I'm understanding," he says, more to himself than to the world.
Understanding.
Sean starts his day lost in the melancholy of a song Leah sent him. By evening, the mood shifts. It's the hospital's gala night. Alex Park, an ex-cop turned resident, makes his debut, bringing an investigator's instinct and little patience. Two cases tug at the heartstrings. The first is Spirit, a girl whose heart is literally on the outside of her chest. The other is Eric, a boy who needs a liver transplant, but his only compatible donor is a convicted murderer. Eric refuses. Park, with his cop instincts, senses the prisoner is planning an escape. In the operating room, Spirit's heart is too large to fit inside her chest, and she refuses to wait for another solution. The criminal's plan goes up in smoke when an allergic reaction makes him ineligible to donate. In an act of desperation and a quest for redemption, he grabs a gun, takes a hostage, and kills himself to ensure his liver saves Eric.
Boris, no!
Claire describes the act as repentance, and the boy finally accepts the organ. At the gala, Sean shows up in an expensive tuxedo, completely out of sync with social norms, but ends up getting laughs. In the middle of the party, Jared breaks up with Claire. On his way out, Sean sees Spirit, now with her heart in the right place, hugging her friends for the first time. He understands that it's for moments like these that everything else is worth it. Sean mentions he lost a bet to his neighbor, Kenny, and had to pay up. The hospital routine swallows him again. Hunter, a former patient of Melendez's, who has been paraplegic for 10 years, returns with neck pain. The x-ray shows a herniated disc, but a simple test reveals a miracle. He can feel pain in his legs, a sensation he hasn't had in a decade. To complete the chaos, Claire's mother, Breeze, shows up unannounced, turning the hallways into her personal stage. The truth behind Hunter's miracle is cruel and ironic. A tumor on his spine is pressing on his nerves, restoring sensation. The surgery to remove it could either let him walk again or leave him even worse off. The statistic is brutal, a 15% chance of catastrophe. Hunter decides to risk it. His wife fears the worst. Meanwhile, Park investigates Kenny and discovers he has a criminal record. The bets shift to the operating rooms. Hunter wakes up but doesn't walk again. Unfortunately, the other patient, Emma, doesn't survive. Claire confronts her mother, who only showed up to ask for money. At home, Sean finds Kenny splurging his money on Chinese food. Their already strange friendship starts to sour. Gretchen arrives at the hospital with her face frozen by Mobius syndrome and a dream to undergo a risky surgery so she can smile and become a comedian. Sean, ever the pragmatist, discourages her. Meanwhile, Morgan and Claire treat a patient who turns out to be an imposter. Beatrice stole the identity of the real patient, Lucy, in an attempt to make the world a little brighter. Sean sets Glassman up on a date with Debbie, the barista. Their conversation is awkward but cute. Andrews fights with the insurance company and gets Gretchen's surgery approved. Beatrice, the imposter, worsens and dies, revealing a tragic story behind the fraud. In the operating room, Gretchen doesn't wake up from the anesthesia, and tension fills the room until Park discovers the cause, a rare deficiency. She finally opens her eyes and smiles. For the first time, the victory earns Andrews praise. That night, reality hits Sean hard. Kenny humiliates him in front of his friends, calling his quirks uncomfortable. Glassman has another date with Debbie, but in the middle of their conversation, his words get stuck. He collapses. The sound of sirens approaches. Glassman faces Sean with the worst possible news: an inoperable brain tumor. Prognosis: 12 to 18 months to live. Sean refuses to accept it and demands a second opinion. In the midst of this emotional hurricane, Caden arrives, a kid who got hazed at a frat party and ate laundry pods. The weight on Sean's mind takes its toll. During surgery, he makes a critical error and punctures an artery. Morgan wants his head on a platter, but Melendez, Claire, and Jared defend him. A new scan makes everything worse. Glassman's life expectancy is reduced to 4 months. To pull Sean out of denial, Glassman takes him to the carousel he used to visit with his daughter, a place full of memories and regrets. Amidst the pain, Sean's mind races. He finds a way to fix the damage he did to Caden and, at the same time, envisions a way to perform a minimally invasive biopsy on Glassman's tumor. Both surgeries become a stage for his redemption. Caden is saved, and Glassman's biopsy reveals a low-grade tumor, treatable. True to his ethics, Sean decides to turn himself in and report his mistake to Andrews. Before entering the room, he finally tells Glassman he loves him. "I love you more," his mentor replies, repeating his daughter's words.
I love you.
I know, I love you too.
I love you more.
It's review week, and Andrews, now the big boss, is in charge. Sean gets top marks for technical skill, but a 0 for communication. The ultimatum is clear: improve, or you're out. Jared doesn't even bother to show up. He's already packing for Denver. The message for Claire is to be more assertive, for Morgan to tone it down. The case of the week is Melanie, who needs a heart. Melendez proposes a Frankenstein-worthy idea: give her a second heart to work alongside her original one. Sean and Jared, working at a mobile clinic, treat Harry, a homeless man who has no sense of his own body. Sean suspects schizophrenia. Jared thinks it's meningitis. If they're wrong, Jared's spot in Denver is gone. At the hospital, Melanie's condition complicates, and Melendez vetoes Claire and Morgan's backup plan. Sean, watching Glassman miss throws with a paper ball, has an epiphany. Harry's problem isn't mental, it's motor. It's a brain tumor. They rush him to the hospital, discover his real name, and not only save his life, but reunite him with his family. Andrews, impressed, challenges Melendez to perform the two-heart surgery, which is a success. Jared says his goodbyes, leaving Sean with a piece of advice: be there for Glassman. When he gets home, Leah is there on his couch, and the tension between them is palpable. He escapes to work and focuses his attention on the janitor, Paul. All signs point to pancreatic cancer. Melendez asks for discretion, but Sean, being Sean, blurts out the diagnosis at once. The news is devastating. 1 year to live, with a slim chance from an extremely dangerous surgery. For his family, Paul decides to risk it. Meanwhile, Dr. Lim faces a delicate case: a young woman seeking reconstructive surgery after suffering female genital mutilation. Between ethics, culture, and law, Park and Lim clash. The situation escalates, resulting in the removal of what was left of the girl's clitoris, a decision that deeply wounds Lim. In an act of rebellion and compassion, she decides to perform the full reconstruction on the operating table. Glassman still hasn't chosen his surgeon, terrified of surviving but losing his ability to operate. In the OR, Paul's battle ends in defeat. He dies on the table. When it's time to break the news to the family, Sean breaks his golden rule. He lies. He says the surgery was Paul's choice, sparing the family from guilt. It's a giant leap in his journey toward humanity. That night, he finally confronts Leah. The baseball she gave him, once a symbol of affection, is now a reminder of abandonment. Afraid of being left again, he asks her to leave. It's the middle of the night at the hospital, and a 36-hour shift basically turns into a survival reality show for Sean and Morgan. Between a guy with, let's say, an over-enthusiasm problem after a party and a kid with a light bulb stuck in his mouth, Dr. Lim, who's supposed to be supervising, gets arrested for contempt of court over a traffic ticket. Chaos reigns. Claire decides to play union rep and confronts Andrews about the inhumane shifts. The fight spills into the OR, where Neil treats her with his usual disdain, until Nurse Flores steps in and defends Claire in front of everyone. In the midst of the confusion, Morgan plants a seed of doubt in Sean's head. She says Leah and Claire treat him like a pet, not a man. This completely breaks Sean. Meanwhile, Glassman, recovering from surgery, starts hallucinating his deceased daughter, Maddie, and these delusions pull him to a very dark place. Sean tries to follow Claire's advice and talk to Leah, but when he finally leaves, he finds Leah spitting fire. He apologizes, but she's fed up and leaves, flipping the script from the previous episode. The heaviest case of the night is Gina, an infertile patient who needs a hysterectomy to survive, and with it, must say goodbye to her dream of getting pregnant. The night ends in a tense silence. Lim returns, de-stresses with the lawyer, and Glassman, alone in his room, hears Maddie's voice calling him again. The lights go out, but the bad vibes only intensify. After their fight, Sean tries to fix things in the most Sean way possible. He shows up with a donut and an apology, but Leah isn't having it. She refuses to move back into the old apartment and is already looking for a new place. Meanwhile, Glassman is sinking deeper into a bad trip with the ghost of Maddie, whom only he can see, ignoring warnings that it's destroying his sleep and his sanity. At the hospital, two cases split the team's attention. Mac, a little boy with Fragile X syndrome and a piece of wood in his shoulder, triggers memories of Sean's childhood bouncing between foster homes. Then there's Kitty, a rock climber with a broken neck, facing a choice worthy of a drama film. The safe surgery ends her career. The risky one, which Morgan suggests, could keep her climbing, or kill her. Glassman's hallucinations spiral out of control, and in the middle of an argument with Maddie's image, Sean catches him talking to himself. About to rat him out, he hears the truth from Glassman himself. Inspired by a "Go for it" from Park, Sean tries to recreate their first karaoke night to apologize to Leah, and it goes horribly wrong. She throws it in his face that he wasn't there for her when she needed him most. The final blow comes from Maddie to Glassman. She died hating him. It's brutal. In the end, Sean does the simple, necessary thing. He asks Leah how she feels. She accepts his apology, and he reveals a bold, sweet plan. He rented the apartment she wanted for both of them to live in.
Yes.
Moving in with Sean sounds cute in theory, but Leah hits the brakes. Living together could turn into dating, and she's afraid of ruining their friendship. Sean, ever logical, thinks feelings can change, but he respects her decision to keep it platonic. At the hospital, 2 cases about secrets and limits. Wade arrives with bubbling urine and a secret. He was formerly obese, had bariatric surgery, and never told his husband. Then there's Louisa with severe anorexia who needs heart surgery, but her body can't handle it. Claire sees a sci-fi level solution, an experimental brain surgery to treat the anorexia. Neil, of course, says no. Meanwhile, Sean tries everything to get Glassman back to physical therapy. Not even a chocolate muffin works. The ace up his sleeve? Debbie, who gets him walking in minutes. Determined, Claire goes over Neil's head and gets a yes from the chiefs. The surgery is a success, but it comes at a price. Neil, furious at being disobeyed, kicks Claire off his team. At the end of the day, Sean's personal life gets a break. He comes home to find that Leah got a new apartment with a super cool roommate and a fireplace. The roommate? Him. The smiles on their faces say it all about their new chapter. Not as a couple, but as cohabitants, ready to try to make it work. First day living together, and World War III nearly breaks out over a toilet paper roll facing the wrong way, and a mug left out of the dishwasher. Leah explodes, Sean shrinks, and they make a pact to adapt to each other. At the hospital, things are tense. Jazz, a violinist, arrives with an infected finger that looks like something out of a horror movie. Sean gets straight to the point. It could be flesh-eating bacteria, and they need to amputate to save her life. But Morgan, a former athlete, refuses to give up on the finger and bets everything on the girl's career. In another room, Riley, a teenager, has symptoms no one takes seriously, and her divorced parents think it's all for drama. Claire believes her. Park thinks she's faking. Morgan's stubbornness comes at a high price. Jazz's infection explodes, and now they have no choice but to amputate her entire arm. The guilt shatters Morgan, but Claire's persistence pays off. In surgery, they discover the cause of Riley's years of pain, a tiny Lego piece she aspirated as a child that got stuck in her lung. Outside the hospital, things also go wrong. Glassman's date with Debbie ends with him falling and refusing help, out of pure pride. In the end, Neil is surprisingly supportive. He consoles Morgan, admits he once competed with Lim and now admires her. He asks Lim out for a beer. Sparks fly, and the shift ends with a hint of romance in the air. At home, Sean and Leah adopt a goldfish, Hubert, whose tranquility contrasts with the drama Claire is living through as she visits Kayla, a college friend with terminal cancer. The morphine no longer works, and Claire brings the case to Neo and Park. In the ER, Santiago's life becomes a horror movie. A nail gun to the forehead, another nail in his abdomen, and during surgery, they discover he only has 1 kidney. As Neil operates on Kayla, Park suggests a treatment that could give her 6 more months, or kill her on the table. She and her husband Dash agree, and Kayla drops another bombshell. She wants Claire to date Dash after she dies. The pressure mounts for Santiago when they find out his brother, Armando, is a match to donate a kidney, but he'll only do it if Santiago signs the family business over to him. Pure blackmail. Santiago refuses, saying their father would be ashamed, and his condition worsens. Out of loyalty, Claire agrees to go out with Dash. The date happens, but Kayla, in fear and pain, accuses her of being a terrible friend. Despite this, her surgery proceeds. In the end, Sean manages to flip a switch in Armando's head by confronting his pride, and the kidney is donated. And at home, a small tragedy occurs. Hubert dies. Leah is devastated. Sean, practical as ever, proves the fish was already sick from the store and returns with a new one. It's a small gesture, but it's his way of loving. A brutal car crash brings Dawn and Todd, both mangled, to the hospital on their wedding anniversary. Claire discovers a hemorrhage and a pregnancy. The baby doesn't survive. The twist comes like a punch to the gut. Todd had a vasectomy. The child wasn't his. At the same time, Morgan and Park treat Finn, a boy who was never vaccinated because of his anti-vax parents. Park wants to handle it delicately. Morgan calls the parents' attitude irresponsible. Things heat up when Park uses a tragic story from Morgan's own past to convince the family. In the hallways, Claire fights another battle. Neil is ignoring her, and Andrews demands she apologize. She stands her ground, insisting she did the right thing. Meanwhile, Glassman starts noticing memory lapses and asks Sean to test him in secret. In Dawn's room, things get bizarre. She kisses Sean out of the blue, but instead of freaking out, he sees it for what it is, a neurological sign. sign. They discover a tumor in her chest that's messing with her inhibitions. The truth shatters Todd. It wasn't one affair, it was 4, but the blame wasn't so simple. In the end, the revelations are painful. Finn's condition deteriorates, and he needs emergency surgery, and Glassman's test result lands like an anvil. He can't remember the name of Sean's brother. Instead of Steve, he says Sam. The silence that follows is more terrifying than any diagnosis. Worried about the safety of the man who's always looked after him, Sean takes a drastic step. He takes away Glassman's driver's license. The fallout is ugly, and to understand what his mentor is feeling, Sean decides to learn how to drive. At the hospital, a patient named George arrives after attempting to castrate himself out of fear of his own impulses, creating a massive ethical dilemma. Elsewhere, Park and Sean treat Billy, a juvenile inmate with a facial deformity. Park wants to give him a new shot at self-esteem, but Sean insists the surgery is purely cosmetic. Behind the scenes, the war for chief of surgery between Melendez and Lim is heating up, with Andrews watching their every move. In the midst of it all, Sean suggests a silicone implant for Billy's face. Lim approves. Outside the hospital, Sean's driving lessons with Leah begin as a comedy of errors, until he swerves to avoid a child, proving he knows what to do when it counts.
You were wrong, Leah. I can't drive.
George's story ends tragically. Seeing no way out, he throws himself in front of a bus, leaving Claire and Morgan in shock. In the power play for Chief, Andrews pulls the rug out from under everyone. Neither gets the promotion, as he takes the position himself. The only one celebrating is Sean, who won the office betting pool. The day ends with a touching scene. Sean, now behind the wheel, picks up Glassman for his radiation therapy. The roles have reversed, and the care has changed hands. It's almost Christmas, and Neil and Lim are trying to end a romance that could spell trouble at work. Sean, annoyed by a flickering light, has no idea it's the least of his problems. 2 patients arrive from the airport, a man and a woman, both unconscious. The man goes into cardiac arrest and dies instantly. Sean notices a rash on Marianne's skin, identical to the man who died, and confirms they were on the same flight. Panic sets in, a mysterious and possibly airborne illness. The quarantine starts small and quickly escalates into a disaster movie. Marianne is isolated. Panic engulfs the ER. Morgan, who is on her day off, shows up furious, bringing along her paramedic boyfriend Tyler, who soon starts showing symptoms. The father of Park's patient, who was about to donate bone marrow, is trapped. So is Park's son, Kellen. A man tries to escape. Lim sedates him, and the doors are locked down. Then, Lim herself tests positive. Chaos is total. Tyler dies in Morgan's arms. Lim collapses in the hallway, and Sean, overwhelmed by the flickering light and the pandemonium, has a meltdown and curls up on the floor in the fetal position. Park panics when his son Kellen has an asthma attack without his inhaler. Yelling at Sean only makes it worse. It's Morgan who finds the solution. She speaks softly, describing a surgery step by step, and he reboots. Park, throwing protocol out the window, breaks quarantine to be with his son and rigs a makeshift nebulizer. In another room, Neil and Claire ignore a DNR order to save a patient, risking their medical licenses. The turning point comes when Morgan discovers a tear in Tyler's mask. The virus isn't airborne, it's spread by contact. The tension spikes when another patient, Viola, goes into labor. Sean, who has never delivered a baby, must perform an emergency C-section, guided by a reflection in the glass. The baby is born not breathing, and the mother starts to hemorrhage. Refusing to lose them, Sean delegates tasks, calling on Kellen to perform chest compressions on the baby, while he controls the bleeding. Far away, Glassman learns it wasn't cancer, it was meningitis. When the dust settles, the survivor count is a relief. The mother and baby are saved. Lim narrowly escapes thanks to Morgan's risky procedure. The quarantine is lifted. Neil and Lim, scarred by the losses, decide to pursue their romance in secret. Glassman tells Sean the truth, and the two share a hug. Survivors. After the quarantine nightmare, a day off is a chance to breathe. Park tries to reconnect with his son and ex-wife. Morgan, in a rare moment of vulnerability, asks Claire out for a drink. Sean, unsure what to do outside of his hospital routine, agrees to hang out with Glassman and Leah and ends up having a blast at a go-kart track. Meanwhile, an investigator named Carmen wants to suspend Lim and Neil for their decisions during the quarantine, but Andrews, as president, defends them fiercely. Around town, Morgan and Claire get tangled in a friend's love drama, and Morgan casually mentions she carries a gun. Park opens up, admitting he might still have a chance with his ex. Back at the hospital, Neil and Lim confess their feelings are real and decide to continue their relationship, but in secret. And Glassman, with a little nudge from Leah, decides to speed up his treatment and plants a seed in Sean's head. He and Leah would make a great couple. That night, Sean seems ready to take a risk. He gets home and asks for a sip of Leah's beer. She smiles and points to another bottle. It belongs to Jake, her boyfriend. The camera freezes on Sean's face as his perfect day shatters in a single moment. Leah and her boyfriend Jake are practically living with Sean, who tries to pretend everything is fine while chauffeuring Glassman to chemo. "I'm great," Glassman says, between bouts of vomiting. At the hospital, 70-year-old Sunny Lee arrives with a mechanical sound in her chest, a rare, purring artificial heart. Sean and Morgan treat Lana, a 34-year-old autistic woman with a brain malformation. Her roommate, Javi, also autistic, is her rock. Morgan notices their connection and needles Sean about the jealousy he feels toward Jake. Sunny's story gets complicated with the arrival of her two daughters, Teresa, her stepdaughter, and Grace, her biological child. Their fight for their mother's affection ends up straining the mechanical heart. Meanwhile, Lana's surgery is extremely risky, with the only option being a craniotomy. Nervous, she wants to have sex with Javi to relax, but Lim immediately forbids it. Sean, trying to be Glassman's doctor, only gets frustrated, until he realizes his friend doesn't need another physician, but a friend. Javi supports Lana, and in a courageous moment, they declare their feelings for each other. Her surgery is a success, as is Sunny's, and Grace finally makes peace with her mother. In the end, Sean learns a valuable lesson. Sometimes, taking care of someone is simply about being there. Sean takes the day off to help Glassman and discovers the secret to his treatment, medical marijuana. He's shocked, but Glassman convinces him to try it. The two get completely stoned, turn the living room into a golf course, and in the midst of a bout of the munchies, have a serious talk about Leah. Meanwhile, at the hospital, a revolutionary idea emerges. 14-year-old Karen, who is brain dead, could be a face donor for Molly, a young woman with severe facial disfigurement. Karen's mother initially refuses, but an elevator encounter with Molly herself changes her mind. As the surgical team prepares for this historic procedure, Sean and Glassman go on a mission to find some cookies called Malamars. The quest turns into a crazy road trip to find Robin, Glassman's teenage crush, with their Uber driver along for the ride as a co-pilot. In the O.R comma time is the enemy. Outside, two fathers connect over the shared guilt they feel for what happened to their daughters. Glassman finds Robin, apologizes for a mistake he made decades ago, and earns a forgiveness that no medicine could provide. The surgery is a miracle. Molly's face is successfully reconstructed. Neo and Lim, amidst their playful banter, decide to stay together, and when the stone duo returns home to the mess they made, Sean finally admits it out loud to the most important person there: "I am in love with Leah." The new chief of surgery, Dr. Jackson Hun, arrives and shakes things up. A genius, arrogant, and with his own personal soundtrack that even plays in the OR, he puts everyone to the test. Right off the bat, he orders Melendez to perform a checkup on a millionaire CEO, Minesh, with a top-down logic. Rich patients pay the bills. The exam reveals a brain tumor. In the nursery, a mother, Diane, blames herself for her baby's health problems, believing her antidepressants are the cause. Sean, true to his literal nature, quotes a study, and the mother breaks down. Han punishes him. He's banned from speaking to patients' families. Glassman meets Larry, a hyper-talkative guy in chemotherapy who tries to drag him to a support group. Glassman bolts. Minesh chooses the riskiest surgery and comes out of it unable to move his left foot. The baby, Persephone, undergoes a surgery that works almost too well. Her heart becomes so strong it starts drowning her lungs. Just as the team is about to shut down the machines, Sean suggests the impossible, rigging up an improvised pressure valve. They try it, and it works. Han summons Sean, praises his brilliant thinking, and then delivers the blow. He's being transferred to pathology, diagnostics, not surgery. For Han, Sean's social difficulties are a liability. You are no longer a surgeon, and Sean's world once again comes crashing down. Leah tries to cheer Sean up with do-over pancakes, but he doesn't want a do-over. He heads to pathology, head held low, where Carly introduces him to the lab and a fascinating bioprinter, but his heart is still upstairs. There, the team treats Clarence, a pastor with cancer who wants to feel the pain of surgery, as penance for killing a man who committed suicide. Meanwhile, Glassman Glassman finishes chemo. Lim and Park treat Sadie, who felt a sense of impending doom while rock climbing. They suspect a brain tumor, but Sean, down in pathology, thinks the diagnosis is wrong. Carly reminds him to follow the rules, but he can't. Claire tries to convince Han to bring Sean back, but the chief is a brick wall. He will never be a good surgeon. To make matters worse, Debbie breaks up with Glassman. Encouraged by Glassman to fight for himself, Sean investigates Sadie's case on his own, gets caught by Han, and is nearly fired. But before he's out, he blurts out his theory. Sadie's problem is a parasite from a Japanese restaurant. Han takes a gamble, confirms the diagnosis, and acknowledges Sean's talent as a pathologist. Sean is left staring at the surgical floor, clutching his toy scalpel, his dreams slipping further away. Leah finds Sean awake all night, stewing over his transfer to pathology. In the parking garage, Lim and Neil are almost caught in the act kissing. Inside, Han is busy blackmailing hospital evaluators with dossiers to protect the hospital in the quarantine's aftermath. The day brings two cases, a baby with mysterious bleeding and Kenny, a man with a giant inoperable tumor. Claire, between sips of tea, comes up with a brilliant and risky plan to save him. During Kenny's surgery, everything goes wrong, and Han wants to call it. Neil stands up to him and sends for Sean. At the same time, Sean has an epiphany about the baby. The bleeding was caused by a traumatic birth. He runs to tell Lim, but is intercepted in the hallway by Claire, who drags him into Kenny's OR. There, the two devise a strategy in real time and save the patient. Glassman gets the best news. He's cancer-free. Empowered, Sean storms into Han's office and demands his job back, repeating, "I am a surgeon," until he's in tears. Han, cold as ice, fires him.
So I'm gonna give you one last chance to maintain your dignity and leave my office. Now.
Surgeon! I am a surgeon!
In the locker room, Sean accidentally breaks his toy scalpel. Outside, the rain embraces him, alone, unemployed, and with his dream in pieces. Jobless and adrift, Sean is at a bar at 10 a.m. when a provocation turns into a beatdown. At the hospital, he lies about what happened. Lim and Neil, on the other hand, make their relationship official with a kiss. And Glassman, now cured, proposes to Debbie, but she thinks the idea is stupid. Claire is suspicious of Sean's story and helps him practice social skills, but he suddenly starts coughing up blood, a consequence of the assault. While talking to his attacker, Zach, Sean spots a medical clue but then collapses. Now both men are in danger. Claire, thinking like Sean, cracks the code. A rare form of syphilis caused an aneurysm in Zach. She saves the man who nearly killed her friend. Glassman takes Sean's case to the board, and Andrews confronts Han. When the chief refuses to budge, Andrews fires him and rehires Sean. The hospital turns a new page. Lim is promoted to chief of surgery. Debbie comes back and agrees to marry Glassman, and Sean, with flowers and chocolates, asks Carly out on a date. She says yes. He skips down the street. For the first time in a long time, the future looks bright. On his first date with Carly, Sean uses a flashcard with possible topics. He talks about movies, but when his plate arrives with pickles, which he asks to be held, his discomfort spirals into chaos as a wine bottle goes flying, which he catches midair. At the hospital, he recounts the disaster. Lim, now the chief, cuts the chit-chat and tells him to get to work. But first, she and Neil have to break up with HR because of her promotion. A blood-soaked bride arrives in a limousine. Morgan and Park bicker over who's right about Harvey, an elderly man in pain. Tests reveal the bride, Suzanne, has an aggressive cancer. Sean suggests a radical and extremely rare surgery. Remove all her organs, treat them, and put them back. Neil thinks the idea is too audacious. Back on the date, Sean reflects. He helped a woman and got a kiss from Carly, but he hated the feeling of losing control just to please her. At the hospital, he explains the date was bad because it was uncomfortable for him, and he doesn't want to repeat a night where only the other person is happy. Sean is still down, and not even Leah can lift his spirits. Claire's mother, Breeze, gets evicted and moves in with her, igniting an old powder keg. At the hospital, Josh arrives a hero. He took a skateboard to the face defending a woman. Park and Morgan turn into suck-ups to Lim and Neil, competing for the first solo surgery. The initial surgical plan for Josh would leave him with limited speech and ability to eat. Andrews challenges Claire, and she pushes back. In the lab, Sean tells Carly he didn't enjoy their date. Glassman and Debbie, acting as love gurus, agree he needs a push. Carly doesn't give up and opens her heart. Her sister has autism. She understands understands the challenges, and she wants to get to know the real Sean. This inspires a new surgical approach for Josh. Lim thinks it's too risky, but Andrews backs the play. Both Josh's surgery and a baby's procedure are successful. Josh is able to speak and reunites with the woman he saved. In the end, Lim announces Claire will lead the next surgery, and a lighter Sean shows up at Carly's lab with a new invitation. No pickles and no script. They schedule a second date. Claire rehearses every move for her first surgery as lead. On the same shift, a fisherman is brought in with a live marlin impaled through his leg. The pressure mounts when Claire finds a blood clot and self-harm scars on her patient, Michelle. Her mother, Patricia, is in denial about her daughter's problems. Meanwhile, the marlin explodes in the MRI, turning the hospital into an aquarium. Lim gives Claire a reality check. Leadership and insecurity don't mix. Patricia pulls Claire from her own daughter's surgery. In therapy, Claire admits she was relieved. Even though she's off the case, she discovers the fisherman has cancer. Michelle refuses to be operated on by anyone else, and Neil convinces Patricia to put Claire back in charge. Before the surgery, Carly confesses she likes Sean's intense questions. Michelle's operation is a success. The fisherman loses his leg, but thanks the fish for saving his life. Everything seems to be settling down, until a call comes through on Claire's mother's phone. The scene cuts to a crashed car and an open bottle of champagne. Breeze isn't coming home. Carly and Sean are kissing while watching TV, but one detail bothers him. He can't stand holding hands. At the hospital, Mitchell Stewart, a famous conspiracy theorist, arrives as a VIP patient. He's suspicious of everyone and everything, swearing he's been poisoned. Tests show the cause is genetic. In another case, Claire and Morgan care for Lily, a girl who hasn't eaten in days and feels no physical pain. Sean seeks out Glassman to talk about his hand-holding aversion, but the topic shifts at the courthouse. Glassman realizes he barely knows Debbie and calls off the wedding. In Lily's room, they discover she also feels no emotional pain, and her husband leaves her. Sean cracks both cases. He figures out Mitchell is taking anti-aging drugs that are destroying his liver, and he confronts Claire, who is carrying her mother's ashes in her car. The world finds a new axis. Glassman and Debbie make up and get married, with Sean and Carly as their witnesses. At the ceremony, he holds her hand. Later, Claire scatters her mother's ashes in a sea lion tank, with Morgan by her side. The episode ends with a simple, brave gesture, 2 fingers intertwined, and a silent goodbye to the sea. The next day, the game-changing news drops. Sean is going to lead his first solo surgery. Leah freaks out with joy.
First lead surgery!
Sean! That is awesome! Here you are!
Claire asks Morgan to keep her grief over her mother a secret, and Morgan gives her a reality check. Sooner or later, the pain has to be faced. In the leadership suite, Lim and Andrews butt heads over which patient to give Sean. She wants something simple. He demands a real challenge. Meanwhile, Glassman is trying to get used to Debbie moving in, and the handgun she brings with her, Wally, which sends him into a panic. The challenge arrives quickly. Beth, a patient who will need a feeding tube for the rest of her life. Andrews forces Sean to deliver the news. He fumbles the empathy part like a character in a horror movie, and Beth kicks him off the case. Later, Carly wishes him luck and gives him the green light to get to second base. Claire and Morgan investigate a drunk who swears he doesn't drink. The twist is cinematic. A tumor in his gut ferments carbohydrates, creating alcohol, auto-brewery syndrome. Midway through his surgery, Sean just stops and walks out of the OR. It's not a breakdown, it's a stroke of genius. Park gets it instantly. He envisioned a technique to spare Beth the feeding tube. It's too complex for him to lead, so Sean becomes the conductor in the room, guiding the team step by step. He closes the incision with the final stitch, imagining his brother applauding.
Easy peasy.
That night, he shows up at Carly's door, ready to check the other breast. Lim sets up a full-blown surgical simulator, complete with a team of nurses, to prepare Sean for his first surgery, part 2. Andrews, however, thinks this VIP treatment is a mistake. During the training, gossiping nurses plant a seed of doubt. If Carly is always busy with friends, does she really see him as her boyfriend? Elsewhere in the city, Debbie gets fired and suggests working with Glassman, who hesitates to mix marriage and business. Melendez and his team care for Patty, a pregnant woman woman facing a high-risk surgery. Against her husband's wishes, she chooses the path that gives the baby the best chance. In Sean's surgery, the problem isn't the scalpel, it's communication. He gets irritated with Nurse Hawks for an instrument handed to him the wrong way and kicks her out of the OR. Lim demands an apology. He tries to prove he was right with logic and earns a formal complaint. "One more strike and you're out," she warns. Tragedy strikes with Patty. Complications lead to an emergency C-section, and Melendez is left with the impossible task of telling her husband that she died. In the end, Sean and Carly finally have the talk they needed. In parallel, Lim goes to Melendez's place, and in the quiet of their shared grief, the two grow closer than ever before. With Carly away on a trip, Sean tries to decipher her emoji-filled texts with Leah as his co-pilot, freezing up like a computer with a virus over a joke. A devastated Melendez is drowning in guilt over the patient he lost. Lim tries to connect with him, but he's put up a wall. Two cases divide the team. Charlie, a 12-year-old boy who is about to lose his second eye to cancer and seems fine, but runs away from the hospital, and Tara, the bubble girl, who has virtually no immune system. Claire and Morgan find Charlie at a baseball game, while Neil freezes during Tara's surgery, still haunted by what happened. When she gets an infection, Park suggests gene therapy. It's an all-or-nothing shot. Neil doesn't want to risk it, but Lim authorizes the offer. Tara calls herself a freak and refuses, until Sean tells her he's one too, and that it's better to have friends than to be alone. Charlie goes on his Vision farewell tour, even trying to get into a strip club and getting barred. After a scolding from Claire, he backs out of the surgery. Regretful, she convinces him to come back, talking about the good life he can still have. Pushing the boundaries of absurdity, Morgan fulfills one last wish and flashes him.
I thought you already took my vote.
Shut up.
In the end, Neil confronts Lim. Their relationship has contaminated their work. A patient might still be alive if it weren't for them. He ends things in a voicemail, alone in the night. Sean and Carly's date levels up. Her bedroom has been fully adapted for his sensory comfort. He's ready until he sees her in bed and freezes. He grabs his shirt and just leaves. The next day, Lim and Melendez deal with the breakup hangover. She tries to be the tough boss, while he drowns in self-criticism. Morgan finally gets her first lead surgery, but hides the pain in her hands and a mysterious medication. The cases of the day: Ren, an astronaut who refuses a surgery that would end her space dreams, and Rosalind, a famous researcher on the verge of death who rejects her family. Sean and Carly try exposure therapy for intimacy and fail again. Frustrated, Carly hears Park's advice echo in her mind when Sean decides to treat it like a surgery. By researching, the tension between Lim and Melendez explodes over the astronaut, and Glassman has to intervene. Morgan reveals her secret to him: rheumatoid arthritis, the same disease that destroyed her mother's hands. Melendez and Lim reach an agreement, saving the astronaut, and Rosalind's ex returns to stay with her until the end. But the job takes its toll. Lim can't be both a boss and a girlfriend. She ends it for good. Sean returns to the scene with a new protocol. Lying on their backs, time runs out, and he doesn't move. It's terrifying and very cool. One small step for him, one giant leap for the couple. Claire wakes up, sees a man's watch on her nightstand, and dismisses its owner, Kane, with a cool elegance. Hours later, he shows up as an accident victim, right in her hands. To make matters worse, his wife appears at the hospital, and Claire has to play the professional with a living, breathing lie in front of her. Sean, excited to finally have sex with Carly, arrives with flowers. Another case becomes a dilemma: Jeannie, who has a stroke every time she has sex with her husband, Tony. The surgery that would save her would also prevent her from ever having sex again, and she refuses. In Sean and Carly's private moment, a half-heart tattoo makes him freeze up again. Morgan needles her. Is Carly turning Sean into a pet project? Carly immediately fires back, defending the love she feels. In parallel, Morgan manipulates Jeannie and Tony's situation. She uses her own pain to convince him to lie, making Jeannie agree to the surgery. And it works. In Kane's case, guilt eats away at Claire. She confesses to Park that she slept with the patient. The surgery is a success, but she encourages the wife to seek the truth. The slap comes in public, a total humiliation. Neil finds her in the hallway, consoling her. That night, Sean and Carly open up about their fears. He's afraid of being alone. She's afraid of failing. They try just hugging, but he's still uncomfortable and leaves. At home, Glassman waits for him with news that shatters everything. Sean's mother called. His father is dying of cancer.
Your dad's been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
The man was a horrible father, but maybe it's time for closure. Sean agrees on one condition. Glassman and Leah go with him. At the hospital, Neil and Claire treat Art Kelman, an NFL player who collapses, unable to feel his legs. The diagnosis, a spinal fracture. On the road, the tension between Leah and Glassman is electric, while Sean just wants to get there. Seeing his old house, he has a panic attack. His mother appears, and he flees to a motel. He opens up to Leah and decides to visit Steve's grave. The first encounter with Ephraim is a disaster. His father plays the victim, and Sean explodes, throwing years of cruelty in his face. The dead rabbit, the blame for Steve's death.
You killed my rabbit. You killed my rabbit. So I don't care that you're dying. I don't care at all.
At a bar, Leah tries to distract him with the idea of a dip in the lake. The next day, Sean's mother explains why she stayed with Ethan. Sean lets her hug him and decides to try to forgive. But Ethan snaps again, calling Sean weak and blaming him for his brother's death. It's the final blow. Back at the motel, Glassman breaks the news. Ethan is dead. Sean locks himself in his room and starts hurting himself. Leah comes in, holds him from behind, and stays with him as he cries out all the pain of his past. In the morning, Sean and Leah wake up in the same bed. Nothing happened beyond comfort, but something has changed. Sean admits to Glassman what he feels for Leah isn't the same as what he feels for Carly. At the hospital, they treat Carrie, a mother with a broken leg who refuses painkillers, and Luca, a young man with a swollen abdomen who refuses treatment. Sean heavily ghosts Carly, who tries to understand what's going on. Morgan gives him some unfiltered advice. Don't trade Carly for Leah. Leah is a flake. We soon discover Carrie is a recovering opioid addict and Luca is a drug mule, his stomach full of packets. In the elevator, Sean tells Carly the truth. With her, he has to try hard to impress. With Leah, he doesn't. Later, when they try to talk again, Carly freezes. The trip with Leah has changed their relationship. Meanwhile, Neil and Claire devise a plan to keep Luca out of jail, but he steals the evidence and disappears, shattering Claire's trust. Neil comforts her. Wanting to see the good in people is not a flaw. In the end, Carly gives him an ultimatum. She can't do this if he still lives with Leah. After a talk with Glassman about his fear of abandonment, Sean makes a decision. He finds Carly, tells her she's right, that he loves her, and embraces her, sealing their commitment.
I love you, Carly.
Carly's ultimatum becomes action. Leah packs her bags and moves out. The mood is awkward, but necessary. At the hospital, a teenage love story battles cancer. Ryan and Angie met in chemo. He's cured, she's not. Her only wish is to go to prom with him. In another case, James suffers from a genetic mutation that is causing him to drown from the inside. At home, Sean and Carly try to have sex again, but this time she's the one who freezes. After the mutation in her relationship with Leah, her body reacts differently, even though she wants to. Angie's overprotective mother pushes Ryan away and lies, telling Angie he abandoned her. Claire discovers the lie and, with Neil's help, sets up a surprise prom at the hospital. Lights, music, tears. To save James, Carly has a brilliant idea. Use zebrafish embryos to test dozens of drugs at once. She uses the fish as a metaphor for her and Sean. They too need to find the right medicine. James gets worse. They choose a treatment almost blindly, and it works. Carly cries with relief, and their connection is reborn. But the day takes its toll. Angie's surgery fails, and she dies. That night, Sean and Carly are finally able to be together in peace. Maybe they found the right medicine after all. Sean arrives radiant, announcing his first time with Carly to Morgan as fabulous, and, in his excitement, wants to know if everyone else is having sex too. Morgan kills the mood. That's not news to anyone, and warns him not to talk about it in front of a terminal patient. The patient, Oliver, just wants relief from his chemo side effects. His wife, Bella, insists he fight, but he's already given up. Glassman treats Caroline, a painter with brain lesions. Surgery would save her life but destroy her art. The bombshell drops. Caroline is Morgan's mother. Their reunion is icy. Sean tries a romantic lunch with Carly and is told he could be better in bed. Caroline flees the hospital. Morgan finds her, and the fight explodes, with her brothers arriving to add fuel to the fire of resentment. Sean has an insight. The painter's seizures are from microhemorrhages, not the lesions. They can remove the tissue, but not cure the disease. Seeing her mother's reflection in herself, Morgan admits a terrible wish that her art would disappear, so maybe there would be room for a relationship. Sean and Claire notice Morgan's secret. The way she holds things gives away her arthritis. Lim gives Sean the golden tip about sex, microwave pizza, and the superpower of total focus. He applies it. The final scene is Carly's smile, which says it all. Sean wants another round with Carly and calculates they have time before their shift. They don't. They arrive late. His patient, Kaylee, has a mysterious sore throat and is so interested in Sean that she takes a picture of him, which is about to become a hurricane. Park and Claire treat Anne, a mother who performed a DIY fecal transplant on herself with her daughter's stool, inspired by an internet tutorial. They soon discover her daughter, Marla, has a serious genetic heart condition. Kaylee's photo goes viral. She's an influencer, and now her fans are hunting for Sean in the hospital. Lim sees marketing. Andrews and Melendez see danger. In the midst of the chaos, Sean has lunch with Leah without telling Carly. When she finds out, she explodes. He lied. He was insensitive. Surprisingly, it's Morgan who defends Sean, telling Carly she needs to deal with her own jealousy. During a surgery, Morgan's arthritis flares up, and she almost makes a critical error. Sean notices and takes joint responsibility to protect her. Andrews, aware of everything, asks him not to tell the patient the truth. In the end, the surgeries are successful. Carly, calmer, admits her jealousy of Leah and says it would be unfair to forbid their friendship. Sean finds Glassman and rejects the fame. He doesn't want to be the good artistic doctor. He just wants to be a good doctor, period.
I want to be known as a good doctor, not a good autistic doctor.
Sean tries to be the perfect boyfriend, breakfast and all, but the clock wins, late again. At the hospital, Lim deals with an anonymous complaint about favoritism. Park confesses it was him to protect Claire, but it was a cold move by Morgan, trying to shield herself in case her arthritis takes her down. The cases of the day: a firefighter attacked by a dog, and Corey, a little boy born without a larynx. An experimental surgery frees him from a tube, but Sean becomes obsessed with giving him a voice and proposes building a larynx from his ribs. It's too risky, and the parents refuse. Personal lives turn into a soap opera. Neil tells Claire they can't be friends anymore because of the gossip, and she seethes with anger. Carly runs into Leah in the elevator in a moment of pure awkwardness. That night, everyone goes to karaoke. Sean, Carly, Leah, and her boyfriend. Sean and Leah sing a duet. Their connection is undeniable, and Carly watches it all in silence. The next day, Corey's parents agree to the surgery. He makes his first sound and thanks Sean. It's beautiful.
Corey says, "Thank you, Dr. Murphy, for pushing for the surgery."
But outside, Carly ends the relationship. No drama. She says she saw the truth the night before. Sean loves Leah. He denies it, but she doesn't hesitate. She says she loves Sean, but tells him to go tell the other woman how he really feels. A woman is found on the street. Park, Neil, and Sean rush to save her, but she dies on the table, calling out for someone named Coley. In the OR, Sean blurts out that Carly broke up with him, but he's fine. Neil calls time of death, but Sean is fixated. Something is wrong. Claire and Morgan treat Aiden, a college student who woke up bleeding, swearing he doesn't drink or smoke, but whose memories conveniently fail. Sean wants an autopsy on the woman. Neil and Lim think he's projecting his own pain. He insists, uses Park's police background, and finds a hummingbird tattoo. Her identity emerges. Maribel, a wealthy woman. Her son rejects her and calls the police when Sean goes to talk to him, and the doctor gets arrested. Glassman posts bail and gets the truth out of him. Sean loves Leah, but is afraid of screwing things up if he tells her. Aiden's story gets even weirder. He has a second personality. Sean solves Maribel's case, a rare hereditary disease. Coley was her son's nickname, from Colibri, French for hummingbird, the tattoo on her body. Empowered, Sean makes dinner and declares his love for Leah. She says she loves him too, but they can't be together. She thinks she's too selfish, and his way of being would be too much of a challenge. His heart shatters into a million pieces. Sean hits rock bottom. He ignores work Glassman and can only think of a way to make Leah change her mind. At the hospital, life goes on. Alice, a patient, keeps falling due to a mysterious illness. Wes, a camp leader, has a violent infection ravaging his heart and kidneys. Only a transplant can save him. In the middle of a consultation, Sean bluntly asks Neil, how did he make Lim fall in love with him? Neil explains that you can't force love. Sean doesn't get it. He rushes to a brilliant solution, redecorating the entire apartment to prove he can change. Leah is furious. Meanwhile, Alice's husband threatens to leave her if she has the surgery. Amidst this chaos, Morgan gives Sean some advice. Find someone who makes you happy, not someone you have to change for. This unlocks something in his mind, and he finds a solution to save Alice. At the same time, one of the camp boys turns out to be a compatible donor and begs to save Wes, the man he sees as a father. Claire has an amazing date with Dash. Sean tries again with Leah and returns home alone. Not even a brilliant surgery can fix a broken heart. Sean hits an all-time low. He misses work, his apartment is a dump, and he lashes out at anyone who tries to help. Claire tries, but he pushes her away. She, Miel, and Sean take on Finn, a man with dwarfism and plenty of charm, until his second girlfriend shows up in front of his first. The harem collapses. Morgan goes to Glassman. Her arthritis is getting worse, and she's considering a surgery that could end her career. Neil gives Sean an ultimatum: get it together or you're out. Another patient, Tyson, faces the amputation of both arms. Natalie, Finn's cheated on girlfriend, smashes his Porsche with a golf club. Sean sees it, and instead of judging, sees courage. He helps treat her hand, and is inspired to end things on his own terms. After operating on Finn, Sean applies the lesson, not to Leah's car, but to the truth he's been holding back. He throws everything in her face. He calls her shallow, selfish, and prejudiced. It's brutal. They both cry, bleeding from the words. In parallel, Claire, after a bland date, confesses to her therapist, terrified. She thinks she's in love with Neil, a brewery, a charity event, Neil, Glassman, and Leah having fun, until the ground shakes and the world comes crashing down. Tanks fly, Leah is trapped, and the ceiling collapses on Melendez. He wakes up with Glassman by his side and one question on his mind: where is Leah? At the hospital, Lim sets up a front line. At the disaster's epicenter, Neil finds the brewery owner pinned under the rubble. Sean realizes one wrong move could paralyze her. Claire examines Neil and sees a suspicious bruise, but he brushes it off. Morgan, fresh from surgery, begs to help, but Andrews wouldn't trust her to carry a tray. Sean breaks the rules and disappears through a hole to find Leah. In the dark, the ghost of Steve appears, and his search leads him to Vera, another victim, not the woman he loves. To save the brewery owner, Claire proposes operating right there. Park finds a boy, Casey, trapped. Another tremor hits, and water begins to flood the space where Sean and Vera are. The race against time becomes even more desperate. Claire rushes Neil to the hospital. The truth is a gut punch. Internal bleeding, irreversible. There's nothing they can do. In the flooding crawl space, Vera makes Sean promise to get over Leah if she dies. He agrees, and to save her, must amputate her leg. Elsewhere, Part tells Casey he isn't going to make it. To give the boy one last moment of peace, he pretends to be his father over the radio, and Casey says goodbye, believing he heard the person he loved most. At the hospital, the farewells to Melendez begin. Lim, Glassman, and finally Claire, who confesses that she loves him and hears an "I love you too" in return before the final silence.
I love you.
Love you too.
Sean and Vera are rescued, a miracle amidst the grief. Shaken, Park calls his ex-wife and tells her he's moving back to be near their son. Claire collapses into Lim's arms, and when Sean finally finds Leah, ready to keep his promise to move on, she kisses him and declares she was an idiot for not seeing it before. The couple everyone was waiting for finally happens.
Promise to Vera.
You make me more, Sean.
1 week before the chaos, a cough in a coffee shop lights the pandemic's fuse. Sean and Leah are in the honeymoon phase of their relationship, while Claire and Lim carry the weight of their grief for Neil. When Mildred, the woman from the coffee shop, arrives at the hospital, Morgan sends her home with a minor flu diagnosis. 2 weeks later, she returns in critical condition, and panic sets in. No tests, no treatment, just the order to go home. Lim fights for tests. Park cancels his move to stay with his son. Glassman hates working from home. The hospital becomes a war zone. Exhaustion consumes the doctors. Patients worsen, and Andrews moves into the garage to protect his wife. Sean physically misses Leah. They try phone which turns into phone loneliness. Mildred dies without saying goodbye to her daughter. Another patient, Ambar, has a baby while in a coma. Morgan and a nurse are exposed to the virus. In the midst of the chaos, Claire starts seeing Neil's ghost, who appears like a beacon telling her things will be okay. All she can do is believe. 8 weeks deep into the emergency, Sean and Leah maintain their love via video call. Morgan returns after testing negative, but veteran nurse Petringa isn't so lucky. She arrives with a high fever and is immediately admitted. Her son asks if she'll be okay. Morgan has no answer. Claire continues to see Neil's ghost. He says the belongings of the departed are just objects, but she insists that each one holds a story. Glassman, addicted to a video game, learns the lesson he needed from a 15-year-old. Apologize to Debbie. Petringa worsens. She and Lim vent about the protest to reopen everything while the hospital buries people. Sean snaps when Leah doesn't answer her phone and takes it out on a patient's wife. Petringa needs to be intubated. Before she is, Morgan opens the blinds to reveal a hallway of colleagues honoring honoring her family and scrubs. But it's not enough. She doesn't make it. Claire finds closure by finding the owner of some lost dog tags. Amidst the grief, glimmers of hope emerge, recovering patience, Park and his son reconnecting, and finally, after 3 negative tests, Sean and Leah hugging again. The pandemic eases, and the hospital becomes an arena. 4 residency spots for 6 finalists. Lim tells Sean, Park, and Claire to put the pressure on and see who cracks first. The cast is diverse. Will, the know-it-all. Jordan, the sharp-tongued. Asher, the ex-Orthodox Jew. Olivia, the nearly mute. And Enrique, the easygoing one. Morgan, now in internal medicine, yawns with boredom, until her patient Josh shows up with a nearly impossible-to-remove tumor. A 17-year-old girl wants breast implants, and Jordan challenges Andrews by opposing it. Sean, trying to be a mentor, embarrasses himself by revealing intimate details about Leah at lunch. On the operating table, Josh's tumor requires creativity, and Morgan makes a brilliant guess. The implant surgery gets complicated, and the girl doesn't wake up. It's time for the rookies to shine. Olivia sees a detail no one else noticed. Enrique suggests a test that saves the girl. Asher improvises and gets pig bladder tissue for Josh. In the end, John, the most serious candidate, quits, finding everyone unprofessional. Lim reveals she was testing the mentors too, and that she didn't buy Will's act either. Thus, Jordan, Asher, Enrique, and Olivia become the new residents. The mission now: make sure no one dies on their watch. On the yoga mat, Sean asks Leah to move in with him again. She hesitates. The trust isn't fully there yet. He responds with a radical gesture. He gives her his bank password. At the hospital, the rookies are in action. Claire treats a man whose ingrown toenail is cancer. Sean and Morgan take on Kenzie, pregnant with twins, whose body is rejecting one of the babies. Andrews gives Sean a talking to. He needs to mentor Olivia, the quietest one, who confesses she's terrified of making a mistake. Sean sees himself in her fear. Kenzie's situation worsens, and Sean proposes a cinematic plan. Induce the labor of one baby, stop the labor, and keep the other developing inside. Controlled chaos. A secret comes out. Olivia is Andrews' niece, and more turbulence. Park is getting a divorce, and accepts Morgan's offer to be roommates. Sean's plan works until the contractions won't stop. Jordan steps in, calms the mother, and miraculously, the contractions cease. In the end, Claire's patient inspires everyone. Park shows up at Morgan's door with his bags. Olivia tells her uncle she needs to stand on her own 2 feet, and Leah unpacks her suitcase at home. They have dinner together, and Sean says he's better now than he was before. For now, it's the happy ending they deserve. Ellie arrives at the hospital with a killer migraine and discovers something bizarre: a tumor with teeth, hair, and fat. She's with her new boyfriend, Zane, but is actually married to Brendan, who is there biting his nails with jealousy and worry. Meanwhile, Morgan and Park, who just moved in together, are living a sitcom-level argument. The reason? A lucky parrot sculpture that was actually a gift from his ex. Downstairs, rookies Asher and Olivia handle their first patients under the watchful eye of a big brother mode Sean, who just observes and offers no help, until Lim loses her patience. Things get real when Asher botches a patient's diagnosis. An aneurysm bursts, and the man dies. Sean, with the subtlety of a bulldozer, blames Asher. Lim tells Sean off, reminding him that being a good teacher isn't just about standing guard. After surgery, Ellie develops amnesia and completely forgets her boyfriend. A video she recorded beforehand serves as a reset, and in the end, she chooses her husband. Shaken, Sean vents to Glassman that he's a terrible mentor. The advice is simple: go home, be with the one you love, and start over tomorrow. That night, the pieces come together. Sean sits in silence next to a devastated Asher, and Morgan and Park, in a rare truce, throw out mementos of their exes and admit they're terrible at moving on. Lim shows up bruised, making up a household accident excuse, but the tension in her eyes gives her away. Ben, an ex-soldier with such severe PTSD that he gets sucked into violent flashbacks, arrives. Amidst this, Sean has his own mission: find a birthday present for Leah. His brilliant idea? Singing stuffed frogs. The drama heats up when Lim pressures Jordan, who is a devout Christian, to participate in an abortion. Jordan wants to learn but freezes at the critical moment, and Lim snaps at her. Ben loses control, assaults his partner during an episode, and climbs onto the roof, ready to jump. That's when Claire connects the dots. Lim is broken on the inside too. The trauma of losing a pregnant patient during the pandemic is still an open wound. Even with Claire offering help, Lim shuts down. After a risky surgery to save Ben, an elderly patient, one of the brutally honest types, confronts Lim directly. Her problem is that she's afraid to face her own demons. Lim retorts, but the provocation echoes in her head. Alone and dizzy, she gets on her motorcycle. On the road, the crisis hits, and she crashes. 。 . 。 . 。 . . . . 。 . . 。 . . 。 . . 。 . . 。 . . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . . . . . . 。 . . . . 。 .
。
and she crashes. Leah wants to spice things up and suggests a shower together. Sean, being Sean, calls the idea inconvenient and possibly dangerous, and proceeds to survey the hospital staff about shower. It's a full moon, which means the ER is in chaos mode. Lim hides a bruise, claiming she hit a cabinet and even sold her bike. Claire knows immediately something is very wrong. Two cases take center stage. Wyatt, a biohacker who tried to become immortal with CRISPR and is now paying the price, and Hannah, a woman whose cancer has returned, while her husband Alan pulls away, afraid of losing her again. The biohacker's story makes Sean obsess over the idea of forever, and his panic only grows when he discovers Leah was once married. He spirals, talking about natural disasters and the end of everything. In the subplots, Jordan tries to sell insoles she made, and Enrique reveals he lives in a van in the parking lot. In the end, the biohacker refuses to reverse the process and loses his wife. Alan sells his business and decides to support Hannah completely. Sean puts together a shower safety kit, trying to adapt, and Claire, at dinner with Lim, finds the wrecked motorcycle hidden behind the car. The secret is out. Leah's parents' visit is a red alert. She gives Sean a list of forbidden topics, basically a survival guide for in-laws, and also fears that Glassman, Sean's second grumpy dad, won't like her. At the hospital, a 14-year-old gymnast, Daria, breaks her spine and has to face the end of her career. Her father, who is also her coach, leaves the decision to her, and she refuses the surgery. Claire sees this as abuse. Lim, still lying to herself about her own trauma, tells her not to get involved. Things get worse when Daria's father collapses. To prepare Sean, the team sets up a practice dinner with Glassman and Morgan playing Leah's parents. A complete disaster where Sean confesses that Leah thinks Glassman hates her. Daria ends up admitting she takes hormones to look more womanly. Her father wakes up and tries to intervene, but she explodes and threatens to emancipate herself. At the real dinner, Sean breaks the ice by comparing the evening to hemorrhoid surgery, and Leah's father cracks up. But then Leah sees her parents' texts trashing Sean. He confronts them, telling them they weren't good parents and don't truly love their daughter. Later, Lim finally breaks down to Claire. Daria agrees to the surgery to save her father. Touched, Leah's father returns to apologize, and Claire, seeing Lim won't heal on her own, reports both of their PTSD to Glassman. Rio, a pregnant transgender man with a tumor, finds himself at a crossroads: save the baby or himself. In another wing, Zara, a black woman who sells medicinal marijuana, arrives with sky-high blood pressure. Glassman pressures Lim about her PTSD, but just gets an earful. Jordan notices Sean has a crush on the radiologist, Dr. D'Souza. He tries to deny it, but isn't convincing. Zara's case gets complicated, and Enrique accuses Claire of racial bias. Rio decides to terminate the pregnancy, but then changes his mind, putting him on a collision course with his fiancée. Sean, with zero filter, manages to offend both of them. That night, he dreams of kissing Dr. D'Souza and wakes up feeling like the worst boyfriend in the world. He confesses everything to Leah, who, surprisingly, stays calm and admits she has crushes too. Zara discovers she was racially profiled and requests a new doctor. During surgery, Lim has a PTSD episode, but the team manages to save Rio. Zara gets worse, and even though she's off the case, Claire has the insight that saves her life. To top it off, Leah, in detective mode, dethrones Sean's crush by catching Dr. D'Souza using the same tongs for pickles, tomatoes, and olives at the buffet. Charm gone. In the end, Claire apologizes to Zara, who doesn't forgive her, but acknowledges her help, and Lim finally begins to admit she needs help. The day starts all wrong: a flat tire, a ticket, and to top it off, a ransomware attack that shuts down the entire hospital. The hackers want $2 million in 24 hours. Leah swears she can fix it, but Glassman is already considering paying the ransom. In the midst of this chaos, Morgan races against time to get a liver transplant for Jamie, a young woman with Down syndrome and a famous athlete who claimed to be a cancer survivor, shows up nearly drowned and with a bizarre infection. Trying to help Leah with the system, Sean only gets in the way and gets scolded. Morgan creates a sort of organ Tinder to find a liver for Jamie. The next bombshell: the athlete confesses to Claire that he never had cancer. The gossip leaks. Lim thinks it was Claire and practically fires her. Leah discovers the hack started because a technician spilled coffee on a server. With the confidence Sean gives her, "You can fix anything," she takes on the hackers and brings down the attack, saving the hospital. In the boardroom, Olivia, Andrews' niece, takes the blame for the leak and is fired. Only later do we find out she never wanted to be a doctor and that Andrews himself leaked it. The transplant chain works, Jamie gets her liver, and Lim apologizes to Claire. Peace, for now, is restored. Glassman goes into fearless mode and agrees to operate on a patient that 9 other neurosurgeons refused. Andrews thinks he's addicted to the post-cancer adrenaline rush, taking risks just to fill a void. The patient almost backs out, but Glassman convinces him. The surgery is chaos. It almost goes completely wrong, but in the end, by a hair, it succeeds. This on-the-edge experience makes Claire and Asher confront their own fears with their mothers. Asher faces his final boss by eating a non-kosher cheeseburger. Claire, in turn, starts playing the cello again. Far from there, Leah just wanted a shoulder to cry on because her car was towed. Sean, not getting the hint, just pays the fine and solves the problem Sean style, while she threatens the towing company with 1 million negative reviews. After the mess, he promises to be there for her when she needs to vent. That was all Leah needed to hear to drop the bomb, with a shy smile. She's pregnant.
I'm pregnant.
In the middle of the night, Sean finds Leah awake, her hands cold and her heart racing, full of doubts about having a child now. At the hospital, 2 complex cases: Dr. Chambers, an arrogant star surgeon with hand tremors, and Oscar, a man with excruciating facial pain that his wife thinks is just an excuse to get painkillers. Sean tells Glassman the news and soon after tells Chambers to his face that his tremors could be a symptom of autism. The man is offended, of course. Meanwhile, Leah asks Claire if the baby could inherit Sean's autism. Oscar's tests prove his pain is real, and his wife breaks down in guilt. Alex declares his feelings for Morgan, and, in the awkward aftermath, pretends it was a joke. Chambers ends up agreeing to the test and confirms it. He is also on the spectrum. In private, Sean opens up about his brother, and Chambers admits how lonely he feels. At the height of their crisis, Sean and Leah go to the clinic together to terminate the pregnancy. But in the silence of the waiting room, they realize the perfect moment doesn't exist. Hand in hand, they turn their backs on the door and decide to have the baby, and in a plot twist, Morgan pulls Alex in and kisses him. The doorbell rings and a stranger is at Claire's door claiming to be her father. Before she can process it, he has a stroke right in front of her. At the hospital, Maya, a dancer, won't stop bleeding. Miles, Claire's father, reveals he has terminal cancer and refuses surgery. Meanwhile, Sean tries to be the perfect father by treating Leah's pregnancy like a medical case. She gets angry, accuses him of being selfish, and tells him not to even show up for the ultrasound. To save Maya, the only option is to amputate her leg, which means the end of her career. Before bed, she and her partner, Leo, share one last dance. The surgery gets complicated, and Leo authorizes the amputation to save her. Claire, overcoming her resentment, convinces her father to have the surgery. He survives, and the two finally get a chance to reconnect. Maya wakes up and, with immense courage, asks Leo to leave so she can learn to live again on her own. Sean ignores Leah's ban, shows up at the ultrasound, holds her hand, and hears their baby's heartbeat. In that moment, they finally feel like parents. Morgan and Alex have barely finished having when she presents him with a contract. If he wants to continue this, he has to date other women too. He's completely baffled, calls her weird, and they go along with it. Leah appears, beaming with the fetal DNA test results. It's a girl. Sean immediately asks if he can paint the nursery pink and gets shot down. We're not in the 1950s. At the hospital, an MMA fighter shows up with a giant bruise and a secret. He has pectoral implants. It turns out the bruise is actually breast cancer. In another room, a patient about to have hip surgery suddenly faints. Sean and Leah get kicked out of a birthing class because he won't stop giving his input. She hires a doula, and he gets annoyed, thinking he can do it all himself, until a conversation with Aaron makes him change his mind. The fighter comes out about his diagnosis to his fans and receives a wave of support. The other patient finally gets the diagnosis that explains everything: Parkinson's. Sean agrees to the doula so Leah can have the support she needs, and Alex, following the bizarre rule, schedules a date, leaving Morgan with a bitter taste of regret in her mouth. A protest in the street turns into a war zone, and the ER is flooded. 2 boys arrive with gunshot wounds, Mason and Ethan. As the medical team races to save them, Leah tries to calm their mothers in the waiting room. The tension explodes when one mother sees the other's wristband and realizes they were on opposite sides of the protest. The ideological battle invades the hospital. In surgery, Sean's team removes half of Ethan's skull but decides to leave a bullet that's in too risky a spot. Mason has multiple organ injuries, and the fear is a lack of blood flow to his brain. Mason wakes up fine, but Ethan starts convulsing. The bullet has moved, and Sean realizes he made a huge mistake. Suddenly, Mason needs needs A-negative blood, which is in short supply. That's when the rival mother, Mistress Wilkie, reveals she's A-negative and donates, saving the son of the woman she was just fighting with. With an idea from Alex and the life-saving blood, both boys survive. Alex confesses to Morgan that he canceled his date because of her, but then immediately ends their fling to try something serious with someone else. And just when everything seems calmer, Leah collapses on the floor, screaming in pain. The diagnosis is a gut punch, vasa previa type 2, a condition where the baby's blood vessels are exposed and could rupture at any moment. In parallel, Maxine, an 87-year-old woman, collapses while dancing. She has a DNR order, but a pacemaker brings her back against her will, and she demands the device be removed. Sean is barred from Leah's surgery and watches from the outside. The operation seems to go well, but then everything falls apart. A pulmonary embolism, more clots, and the baby's lungs don't respond. The truth lands like concrete. The baby won't survive. Maxine, determined to die, refuses treatment and throws a farewell party in her room. Aaron secretly administers an antibiotic and saves her, completely violating her wishes. Devastated, Sean tells Leah the news. She decides against inducing labor. The pain of leaving the hospital without her daughter would be unbearable, and opts for a D and C. In the end, Asher, outraged by Aaron's actions, helps Maxine legally pursue assisted death, and Sean and Leah return home hand in hand, in silence, carrying a grief that has no name. At home, Sean tries to fix Leah's pain with statistics and decides to go back to work as if nothing happened. At the hospital, Senator Marion Clark arrives with facial spasms. Another patient, Artie Hill, has heart failure, and the legendary Dr. Nakano, Andrew's former boss, requests tests for an innovative surgery. Sean suspects Artie's previous surgery went wrong, accuses Nakano of malpractice, and angers Andrews. Stubbornly, Sean tells the patient his theory directly. Claire, a fan of the senator, agrees to find a cosmetic solution, despite the risks. The tests prove Sean was wrong, and the senator is revealed to be a politician of manufactured speeches. Leah, fleeing her own grief, buries herself in distractions. When her mother calls, Sean snaps and hangs up on her. Minutes later, in the middle of a conversation with Leah, he has an epiphany and finally understands Artie's problem. He runs to the OR, stops everything, and alongside Nakano corrects the procedure. The operation is a success. Nakano, noticing a small slip-up of his own, decides to retire. And only then does Sean see the size of the hole the loss has left in Leah. He holds her as she cries over fruit flies, which, of course, were never the real problem. Claire meets with her father on one condition. They either watch a movie together or he can leave. Sean, trying to cope with his grief, plans a therapeutic camping trip. Leah thinks it's a terrible idea, but goes anyway. At home, Glassman is nearly shot by his wife Debbie, who got startled. The gun was unloaded, but the fight over trust blows up their marriage. The camping trip is a disaster. Rain, a giant RV blocking the view.
We have a view of the lake. It's pretty.
At the hospital, Lim's team treats a girl with a tumor her parents had always refused to operate on. During the trip, Leah gives up on the tent and sleeps in the car. Claire confronts her father, who blames her mother and says he always sent money, which she never saw. In the morning, Leah decides to give the hike with Sean a chance, until he slips and shatters his ankle. With no signal and no help, he instructs her she'll have to operate on him right there with whatever is in her backpack. On the trail, with steady hands, Leah cuts, drains, and sutures his ankle, saving him as he passes out from blood loss. Back in the city, Claire finally forgives her father, and Debbie, for her part, packs her bags and leaves Glassman. The team lands in Guatemala for a medical mission. At the rural hospital, the reality check is harsh. They can only perform 12 surgeries, and the line of patients is enormous. Claire is devastated when she has to turn away a mother. Andrews connects with a young baseball fan, but the case is so complex that he's put on the no list. Lim organizes the triage. The next day, Claire convinces a woman with gallstones to accept surgery. Andrews doesn't give up on the boy and pulls Sean in to devise a wild plan. The final dispute for the last spot is between Andrews' boy and Claire's patient. The boy wins. Later on, a taxi driver kidnaps Lim and Dr. Rendon, the local physician, but it's only to help deliver a baby, which ends with a kiss. At the hospital, a missing medication is replaced with a derivative of snake venom. The patient improves, but not enough, and the spot opens up for Claire's patient. At the end of the day, Leah tries to talk to Sean, but he only talks about work. Tired of talking to a wall, she drives drops the bomb. She's moving back to her parents' house in Pennsylvania. In the middle of the Guatemala mission, a blackout cuts power to all the operating rooms. Park and Lim are paralyzed, but Sean improvises a technique and manages to remove a tumor without the help of an ultrasound. At dawn, Lim wakes up next to Mateo Rondon, the local doctor, and they share confidences that sound like a beginning. Andrews tries to flirt with the nurse, but she suddenly points to his wedding ring. Later, in a gesture that impresses everyone, he offers the ring as payment for a specialist to help with a case. Claire faces a super aggressive cancer surgery she's never done before. Andrews says no, but Lim encourages her. Morgan's arthritis flares up mid-procedure, and Park has to take over to save the patient. Claire asks Sean for help, who, echoing Glassman, tells her to trust her gut. She trusts it and saves the patient. On the bus back, secrets start to surface. Park and Morgan finally admit they love each other. Mateo confesses he has an arrest warrant in the US, and Claire receives an offer to become chief of surgery at the Guatemalan hospital. At the airport, just when everything seems settled, Leah turns back. She's not leaving. And what's more, she proposes to Sean in front of everyone.
Will you marry me?
Of course. I love you.
I love you too.
Leah wakes up from a nightmare where lightning strikes her wedding and forbids any outdoor plans. Meanwhile, Glassman is deep in his post-breakup funk. The good news is that Mateo, the doctor from Guatemala, shows up at Lim's door, finally free to stay in the US. At the hospital, a super weird patient named Salen appears, full of questions that annoy everyone. Tests indicate a tumor, but she disappears, invades Glassman's office, eats before a procedure, and generally disrupts things. Sean treats a young man with cancer that he contracted from his mother at birth. The mother, in turn, refuses to treat her own cancer to focus on her son. After another nightmare, Leah cancels the engagement party, but Jordan convinces her to go through with it. The party is a disaster. Glassman gets drunk, gives a depressing speech, and reveals that Debbie left him. Seeing the weight on Leah's shoulders, Sean suggests they plan everything together. In the end, the bombshell. Salen reveals she faked all her symptoms just to test the doctors. And the final blow, the hospital has been sold, and she's the new owner. Salen arrives with her new brand, Epicure, changing the hospital's colors, installing feedback kiosks, and calling patients customers. Morgan loves the corporate vibe. Park hates it. The first case of this new era is Abby, a pregnant inmate convicted of her first child. Salen demands an ultra-fast discharge. The baby, Meggie, gets worse, and tests detect antifreeze in her blood. Abby becomes the prime suspect. Glassman tries to resign, but Salen blackmails him, saying she'll keep his clinic open if he supports her. In the midst of all this, Sean can only think about the wedding cake tasting, but it's there, sampling sweets, that he has his idea. It's not poison. It's a rare genetic condition that makes the body produce an acid that looks like antifreeze in tests, meaning Abby was likely wrongfully convicted. Leah, fed up with the bureaucracy, proposes a new system directly to Salen, who loves the idea. But the victory has a bitter taste. The new soap and the loud hand dryer in the bathroom overload Sean's senses. A bad omen that the Epicure era will be a living hell for him. Sean can't sleep, obsessing over every one of Salen's changes, especially the jet air hand dryers, which, according to him, spread germs all over the bathroom. Leah gives him the key. To win Salen over, he needs to speak the language of money. The new boss blocks an expensive surgery on an injured motorcyclist because of his basic health plan, leaving Lim's hands tied. In parallel, Morgan fights her own battle with flatulence. She doesn't want to be human in front of Park. Salen, overhearing them by chance, suggests turning on the shower to cover the noise. Leah helps break the ice by telling a disgusting story that proves vulnerability brings people closer. Sean can't stand the texture of the new scrubs, storms into the server room, and throws everything that bothers him in Salen's face, from the fabrics to the dryers. And surprisingly, she gives in. She brings back the paper towels and lets Sean wear his old scrubs. With his mind at ease, he finally finds a solution to operate on the motorcyclist. But as he leaves the hospital, a surprise awaits, a gigantic billboard with his face on it. The caption, "Some doctors are different, so are some hospitals." Sean comes face to face with his own image on a giant billboard and goes to confront Salen. She says it's in his contract and gives him 48 hours to decide if this is a problem or an opportunity. At the hospital, a patient named Holly arrives, accompanied by her father, Walt, the infamous Dr. Google, who comes armed with diagnoses from the internet. The medical team rolls their eyes, but the man nails the diagnosis on his first try. Seeing a good story, Salen makes the father a consultant on the case, to Sean's horror. When Walt suggests a risky risky treatment and his daughter gets worse, Sean explodes and is taken off the case. In another wing, Morgan treats a patient who abandoned her child years ago and now needs a transplant. Park judges her, and Morgan, who is freezing her own eggs, starts to question if she would be a selfish mother. In her bed, Holly reveals she chose Sean precisely because of the billboard. She wanted a doctor who thinks differently. This flips a switch in Sean's mind. He returns, finds a way to work with the patient's father, and saves the day. As night falls, after Leah helps him fix his old car, Glassman packs his bags and leaves in silence, without saying where he's going. The hospital is buzzing. Lim takes on the case of Rosa, Mateo's ex, and the tension is immediate. Andrews thinks she's mixing personal and professional and orders the patient transferred. Lim doesn't stand for it and crosses town just to operate on Rosa anyway. There, she hears enough about Mateo's past to conclude the obvious. It's over. Back at St. Bonaventure, Sean discovers he has the worst patient satisfaction scores in the hospital and tries to be nicer, but fails miserably. Meanwhile, Glassman is a no-show for his wedding tuxedo fitting, and Leah, to ease her fiancé's anxiety, does the unthinkable. She hacks the system, deletes the bad reviews, and inflates his score. The case of the week is Mr. Song, a victim of a hate crime with a brain tumor. He doesn't want the surgery, but Sean convinces his daughter to authorize it. The outcome isn't perfect, but the father respects her decision. As the day ends, Salen asks Andrews out, and he accepts. A new power couple rises as another one falls. Glassman is playing baseball, trying to tell the world where to go, when Leah shows up asking for help. Sean is at rock bottom. He ignores her. Alex attempts a rescue, inviting Sean for pizza and a movie, but their shift explodes when Brandon falls from a 9-story scaffolding. In parallel, Morgan negotiates with Salen to be the head of the clinic and demands total control. Salen provocatively agrees on the spot. Alex realizes Brandon is O-negative, the same blood type as little Ollie, who is waiting for a heart. He calls the mother and tells her to bring the boy in, even if it means canceling his Make-A-Wish dream. Sean refuses to give up on Brandon and is shocked when Alex mentions organ donation. The tension only worsens with the arrival of the father, whom the patient hasn't spoken to in 2 years. It's Asher who delivers the worst news: probable brain death. Leah confesses to Glassman that she faked Sean's scores. He tells her to handle it herself. Sean tries a procedure with a 1% chance of success and fails. Alex confronts him bluntly. His stubbornness killed the patient. As reality crushes them all, the father says his goodbyes, and Brandon's heart saves Ollie. As a prize, Salen gives Morgan Glassman's old office. Lives intersect, dreams change hands, and a defeat becomes a miracle. Sean and Leah are on the hunt for the perfect church, but he gets stuck on one detail: the squeaky floorboards. Their debate is cut short when a car crash happens right in front of them. Sean rushes to the driver, but Leah pulls him toward a pregnant woman, Alma, whose heart is racing. Right there on the asphalt, he performs an emergency procedure and saves her. Meanwhile, Aaron wants to sell his house and escape to Montana, but the arrival of his ex, Ilana, changes everything. Her husband, Sunil, has been diagnosed with dementia, and she needs his opinion on an experimental treatment. At the hospital, Sunil has a memory lapse, and Glassman starts to suspect the diagnosis. In the OR, Sean can't stop talking about the floorboards, irritating Jordan and Lim, and Alma faces an impossible choice: save her legs, risking the baby, or accept a wheelchair. Confused, Sean seeks out Aaron to talk about the floorboards. Glassman reveals he's moving and still agrees to be the best man, but with a warning: he won't always be around. It's time for Sean to learn to work things out with Leah. Alma's baby dies, and a devastated Sean calls off the wedding. He moves to the couch and shuts the world out. To avoid a lawsuit, Salen orders a cover-up. Lim is boiling with rage and vows to take down the CEO, no matter the cost. Leah tries to talk to Sean but is met with a list of accusations: the lie about moving to Montana, the falsified performance reviews, and her silence about it to Salen. For him, the relationship is over. Lim approaches Leah for evidence to nail Salen, and Leah agrees to help in secret. The CEO plays dirty. She goes to Alma's room, blames the pharmacist, claims he's already resigned, and shoves a settlement agreement in front of her to sign while she's still in shock. Except the pharmacist didn't quit. Salen corners him and forces him into a non-disclosure agreement. With nowhere to turn, Leah asks Glassman to try to get through to Sean. Behind its sterile corridors, the hospital becomes a chessboard where hearts are the pawns. Leah takes refuge at Jordan's place, who tries to make Sean see the light. At the hospital, Lim is removed from her position, and Andrews becomes the new chief of surgery, but she counters by forming an anti-Salen resistance. Park and Glassman join the team, while Sean, Jordan, and Morgan sit it out. In the OR, bar, a pop star who can only communicate through an electronic larynx risks her voice to get it back. She nearly dies on the table but survives by a thread. On another floor, Joe, a devoted father, agrees to arm surgery just to keep caring for his son, Cody. Everything goes wrong. He becomes paraplegic. Cody has a breakdown and ends up in the ICU. Amid the chaos, Morgan has a Dr. House moment. A tiny pancreatic tumor is the root cause of the boy's issues. After surgery, the boy walks again in a soap opera-worthy plot twist. Sean and Leah finally make peace, and upon seeing Andrews acting as Saylan's corporate mini-villain, Sean resigns.
That surgery was bad medicine. I quit.
A farewell that sounds like the beginning of a revolution. Unemployed, Sean channels his frustration into spreadsheets of medical residencies until Leah and Glassman arrive with a plan worthy of a heist movie. He returns to the hospital as an inside man while they leak Saylan's dirty laundry to the press. The anti-Saylan team gathers, but Saylan shows up with pizza for their clandestine meeting and blackmail for dessert. She has files on everyone and threatens to expose and fire Lim, Glassman, and Leah. They change the plan. They'll expose Saylan live during an investors meeting. Meanwhile, a surrogate with cancer wants to protect the baby at all costs, trying to pay a debt of guilt over her own son's death. In another room, chaos. A liver recipient starts convulsing. Alex, tired of Morgan always prioritizing her career, quits. In the climax, Andrews flips the script and hands over a dossier against himself, making it impossible for Saylan to proceed without destroying her own president. Cornered, she throws in the towel and gives back the hospital. Game over.
Well, good luck.
With Saylan gone, Andrews reclaims the presidency and reinstates Lim as chief, but announces the clinic's closure due to Morgan's confession. There's no time to process. A family arrives, torn apart by an accident. The parents, Brian and Elaine, are fighting for their lives, and their daughter, Isla, seems fine, until she isn't. Sean, not one for affection, forms a bond with the girl, who entrusts him with a bubblegum wrapper ring. Lim, still bitter about the past, is angry with Andrews and with Glassman for jumping ship. Ayla, feeling guilty, hears Sean's most intimate story, the death of his brother, Steve. When the girl needs surgery, Sean hesitates, and Jordan metaphorically holds his hand. In another room, Andrews, Lim, and Glassman make peace while saving Elaine. Everyone survives. Ayla hugs Sean, who accepts it, surprised by his own reaction. Morgan finds a loophole to keep the clinic open, and Sean proposes to Leah again, this time with a ring he made himself. She says yes.
Love. With me for the rest of our lives.
Of course.
The end of one cycle, the beginning of another. Sean walks in on Leah during an intimate moment and files the information away like a new diagnosis. In the ER, Lim treats Marielle, who fainted on a plane and has no insurance. She enrolls her in a special program. Her fiancé, Isaac, never leaves her side. Morgan deals with a hemorrhoid case, while Asher and Alex dive into Lim's case and are charmed by the couple, until an X-ray reveals the truth: lung cancer. Over lunch, Leah and Sean discuss the incident. He, objectively, says he hasn't done that since they've been together and asks if she's unsatisfied. In the hall, Brenna, Morgan's patient, bolts before surgery. A 45-year-old virgin, she has a date and fears dying without experiencing life. Marielle's cancer turns out to be just a fungus. Isaac freaks out, disappears, but returns, repentant, seeking relationship advice. Sean gets the Ferrari metaphor from Glassman. Sex has a gas pedal and a brake. Bring chocolates and listen. The romantic night fails, but fate intervenes. Brenna's date comes to the hospital, and they end up stuck. In the end, Sean and Leah laugh it all off, and what was taboo becomes an inside joke and a sign of affection.
My patient's vagina.
Asher and Sean treat Trent, a 17-year-old biohacker with an infected implant in his hand. His exhausted mother sees her son's hobby as a threat, but agrees to the experimental surgery Sean proposes to save the hand. At the hospital, Leah asks Jordan for help with the project, and Sean responds with a list of house rules. Classic Sean. Morgan drags Glassman into a controversial case, an experimental brain surgery to treat Kayla's depression. Her brother Guardian blocks the idea, controlling her every move, until a breakdown causes her to attack attack him, and reality forces him to concede. Between cases, Park and Morgan talk about buying an apartment, but he backs off. The issue isn't money, it's his wounded pride over her likely earning more than him. In this hospital, the heart sometimes weighs more than the scalpels. At the hospital party, Sean circulates like an allergy inspector. Garlic here, nuts there, better not touch anything. An emergency calls him away. Jake lost his big toe after his wife, in the dark, mistook his patterned sock for a snake and attacked it with a machete. Clean surgery, toe reattached. Back at the party, it's absolute chaos. Everyone who ate something is hallucinating and vomiting. Lim sees a snake on the surgical table. Marcus and Audrey air their dirty laundry in front of everyone. Asher and Alex climb shirtless onto a table to sing Making My Way Downtown and fall off. With half the staff tripping, Sean tries to fix everything at light speed, clashing with Glassman's careful methods. The rush takes its toll, a medical error that Glassman has to correct. The reprimand is harsh and direct. Take a leave of absence. Not even the ER hero can operate without a break. Joan lives inside an iron lung, a capsule from another era, and is about to face surgery until the machine breaks down. Leah hits the road with Sophie, Joan's roommate, on an impossible mission: find a 1938 Chevrolet part to resurrect the machine. They succeed, but Joan suffers a lung rupture. After surgery, she backs out of the main operation out of sheer fear. Sophie turns the tide by bringing in former students who saw Joan as a beacon. The weight of their inspiration overcomes her fear. In parallel, Andrews and Resnick treat Kevin, a boy injured in a foster home. The suspicion of a hangs in the air. The quiet boy pulls out his own stitches just to stay longer at the hospital. A bond slowly forms between him and Andrews, who reveals he has dyslexia. With this, he ensures the boy's safety and another week of care until a new home is found. The cameras arrive and Sean and Leah's life becomes a reality show. He's rhythm, routine, and precision. She's improvisation and chaos. Jordan wants her face blurred, and Asher loves the fame. Lim sees an opportunity and throws Sean and Alex into the spotlight with two difficult cases. Dana, with severe burns, and Grant, a firefighter who risks everything to remain who he is. In the OR, the camera's light distracts Sean. He underestimates the severity of the burns, and Dana's daughter is horrified by her mother's new appearance. Sean blames Jordan, but after reviewing the footage, he admits his mistake. The producer Sophie offers to cut the scene, but he refuses. Heroes make mistakes, and showing it can inspire others.
And still be inspirational.
Elsewhere, Grant refuses a surgery that would keep him from the fire, but Alex understands the value of this family and does what's necessary to save him, even if it's the forbidden surgery. In the end, Sean and Leah realize a fancy wedding isn't for them. A surprise party reminds them what really matters, and to top it all off, Claire returns, singing karaoke. Claire returns as if she never left and brings a final boss with her, Lucho, a patient with 3 tumors, brain, heart, and kidney. The team splits up, with Claire in charge, clashing with Lim, who accuses her of being too emotional to lead. The friction grows. Meanwhile, Leah pushes for an elegant wedding, and Sean suffocates in a tight-fitting suit. In the operating room, a hemorrhage nearly kills Lucho, but Claire intervenes and saves the patient. Later, a clot blocks the brain surgery, and the case seems lost, until, at a party, a light goes on in Sean's head. He rushes back to the hospital with the solution and pulls Lucho back from the brink. On their wedding day, at the church doors, Sean and Leah ditch the fancy ceremony for a bus. Running away never felt so right.
Oh. Here. Okay.
Lim and Claire make peace, and Lim opens her home to Nurse Villanueva, a victim of domestic violence. The hospital saves lives. The home saves people. Tired of spreadsheets and flowers, Sean and Leah decide to get married at the courthouse the next day. Simple and drama-free. Meanwhile, Dallasay, Villanueva, is living with Lim to escape her abusive ex. At the hospital, Asher's parents show up unannounced. His father, Yosel, has terminal cancer and is hoping for a miracle from his doctor's son. Asher freezes when his boyfriend Jerome has to draw blood from his father-in-law-to-be, who doesn't even know he exists, let alone that his son is gay. The Shabbos dinner becomes a battlefield. Asher refuses to pray. The argument explodes, and he chooses the truth, kissing Jerome in front of everyone. At the courthouse, just as they're about to say their vows, Glassman and Jordan interrupt. They've organized a surprise wedding on the hospital rooftop. The ceremony is emotional. Asher reconciles with his father, and the party is in full swing until Lim goes downstairs for glasses and finds Dallasay stabbed. The attacker then stabs her too, while upstairs the music plays on, oblivious to the horror unfolding below.
Dallasay!
The party has barely cooled when St. Bonaventure becomes a horror movie set. Lim and Villanueva are bleeding on the floor. Andrews and Glassman, alerted by a disconnected call, cross paths with the attacker in the elevator. He stabs the security guard, takes his gun, and forces Andrews to initiate a full lockdown. Sean, Leah, and Alan find the victims. Sean freezes, reliving the trauma of his brother, but snaps out of it. Short-staffed, Leah becomes an emergency scrub nurse. In Lim's surgery, Glassman wants to play it safe, even if it leaves her with permanent damage. Sean disobeys and follows his intuition, enraging his mentor. Meanwhile, Asher and Resnick are taken hostage and forced to operate on another patient at gunpoint, guided via video call. The attacker finally surrenders but is shot. The team faces an impossible choice. The only bypass machine goes to the shooter, and they have to improvise with Lim. She codes. Sean freaks out, sees his brother in a vision, and comes back to save her. In the end, Lim wakes up, alive, but paralyzed from the waist down. 14 weeks later, Lim returns in a wheelchair and publicly thanks Sean for saving her life. The rumor that she hates him dies right there, but only on the surface. Sean and Park become attending physicians and welcome the new residents. Perez, the heartthrob, and Powell, who makes waves immediately by refusing to participate in a pig heart transplant. Sean seeks advice. Glassman tells him to be patient. Leah tells him to ignore it. Lim suggests he respect the resident, and luckily, a human heart becomes available at the last minute. Determined to operate, Lim tries and fails her first surgery. Later, she adapts the room and successfully completes the second. Park and Resnick are stuck in a messy on-again, off-again romance, and Andrews demands they keep their drama out of the OR. That night, alone in her car, Lim breaks down and admits to herself what she denied out loud. She blames Sean for her paralysis. Married life requires adjustments. Leah wants to have dinner with friends. Sean shuts it down. She finds him re-washing already clean dishes, quirks that test her patience. Lim asks Andrews for her own surgical report, and he lets her investigate, but cautiously. Alan tries to deny her crush on Perez, but confesses to Asher that she's falling for him. At the hospital, a couples therapist with a tumor becomes a mirror for Sean, who calls an urgent meeting with the department heads to request rules for not getting divorced. Lim tells him to talk to his wife. Park deals with Katie, a patient diagnosed with bipolar disorder caught in a war between her mother and stepfather. The real problem was something else, and Powell, in addition to solving the case, reveals her prosthetic leg.
But I'm on one leg.
Lim confronts Glassman about Sean's disobedience. He admits his anger, but says it wasn't a career-ending mistake. For Lim, it was. Sean's patient dies, but not before telling him to cherish Leah. He tries to thank Lim, and she cuts him off. From now on, it's strictly professional. And yes, she blames him. Leah realizes the Cold War between Lim and Sean is destroying her husband. He insists he's fine and rushes off to coffee with Glassman, who cancels at the last minute. Lim meets her handsome neighbor in the elevator and admits she feels lighter for having told Sean off. Meanwhile, Park discovers the woman he spent the night with is married. The team saves the arm of a war reenactor who used live explosives and the leg of a swimmer who lost his foot. Leah confronts Glassman, who admits it. He wants Sean to accept responsibility for Lim. Andrews notices Sean isn't okay and he moves into a storage room. Glassman confronts his protege, accuses him of the mistake, and the two have a falling out. Alan and Perez almost kiss, but he pulls back. Lim invites her neighbor for dinner. In the middle of the night, Sean has a breakthrough, a way to reverse Lim's paralysis. He runs to Glassman's house, his hope renewed. Sean presents his plan to cure Lim. Glassman lists the risks and shoots down the initial ideas, but Andrews demands they work together, and Lim agrees. Later, Lim tries to distract herself with her neighbor, and Resnick becomes her stylist and friend. Alan and Perez are stuck in their almost romance. He likes her, but sets boundaries. Asher and Powell are tasked with revealing to a family that the father isn't biological. The bomb goes off in the hospital, Asher gets punched, and Sean reprimands them. In the lab, the friction between Sean and Glassman continues. It's Leah who thaws the ice, reminding Glassman of his role as a father. He and Sean finally connect and create the perfect plan. And then, the shocker. After a disappointing night with her neighbor, Lim reflects and decides against the surgery. Sean is crushed.
Concern is recovery time. I can show. Stop!
Leah reminds him, sometimes just trying is a form of helping. Later, Perez confesses to Alan why he keeps his distance. He's a recovering addict. She understands. For now, friendship is all they have. A hellish heat wave hits the city, and Sean arms himself with everything that cools. He sees Lim suffering more because of her injury, and the tension with Powell escalates when she reveals she advised Lim against the surgery. Suddenly, a blackout. A nursing home dumps its residents at the hospital. Resnick and Asher lose a grandfather, go out to find him, and return with the wrong old man, laughing at their own disaster. Park and Glassman operate on a stubborn elderly woman who survives, but with little time left. Alan and Perez turn a patient's final moments into a serene goodbye. Annoyed, Sean pulls Powell from his case, but Leah prods him to understand the root of his discomfort. Outside the hospital, Powell takes Lim to play wheelchair basketball, reigniting her fire. Back on the case, the patient demands Powell, forcing Sean to swallow his pride. The generators fail, and Powell's idea saves the day. They look at each other and finally see one another. Two surgical history nerds, different from everyone else, but finally on the same team. Leah wakes up in go mode, ready to try for a baby again, and Sean gets on board with her optimism. At the hospital, Andrews' ex, Isabel, arrives with an impossible mission: operate on Jenna, who is pregnant with sextuplets. It's like the Avengers of the operating room with a team for each baby. Lim delivers baby F still inside the amniotic sac, like a bonus level, while Glassman rushes to fix baby E's spine. But victory only comes with a cry, and for a while the delivery room is quieter than a library. The tension affects everyone. Resnick becomes even more determined to be a mother. Park offers to be a donor, but they both realize it's a terrible idea, and he promises to help her search. Asher, who didn't want kids, changes his mind after seeing Jerome sing to one of the babies. And Powell plays matchmaker, setting Lim up on a date. Amidst it all, Sean admits he's a nervous wreck about Leah's appointment, and the news hits like a gut punch. She may never be able to carry a pregnancy to term. After a Black Friday level rush, one by one, all 6 babies cry. The doctors cheer, as do the parents. But Sean's joy turns to dust when he gets home and finds Leah in pieces, shattered by the diagnosis. Perez and Alan arrive together, having been up all night. Asher, who misses nothing, immediately theorizes it's breadcrumbing, leaving just enough crumbs of attention to keep someone hooked. Alan swears they're just friends, but the seed of doubt is planted. Sean takes on a bizarre case: a surgical towel forgotten inside a patient's intestine. The catch: the patient's wife is also a surgeon and was on the team. Sean asks Lim for help, but she, still holding a grudge, tells him to figure it out himself. In surgery, things take a turn, and they have the option to perform a hysterectomy. The surgeon wife, terrified, chooses to save her partner's life, and the two reconcile. On another floor, things get serious. Resnick, Park, Perez, and Alan treat a patient with signs of Morgan shares her own trauma and regrets, giving the woman the courage to get the exam. Meanwhile, Andrews, the chief, almost skips a cosmetic surgery for a meeting, but Nurse Villanueva puts him in his place. In the end, Sean finally approaches Lim, apologizes, and confesses that his fear of losing her is the same as when he lost his brother. Lim agrees to a fresh start. To end the day, Alan gets ready for a date, determined not to wait for him anymore. And then Perez responds, with a kiss, and walks away, leaving her more confused than a quantum physics meme.
I don't know.
Sean and Leah visit their dream house, or nightmare house, depending on your perspective. Leah falls in love and swears she can renovate it. Sean only sees danger on every step. Meanwhile, Perez asks Alan out for a dinner that will finally define their relationship status. At the hospital, the bombshell: Lim might be able to walk again with a new surgery. She's afraid of another disappointment, and Sean, completely clueless, interrupts to ask for advice about the house. Glassman tells him Leah just needs a distraction, and Sean misunderstands completely, irritating her. The result? Goodbye new house for now. Sean also invents a points game among the residents, but the competition sours when a patient's condition worsens, and Perez has to break the rules to save them, ending the game. Lim, on the other hand, agrees to the surgery and also gets a marriage proposal. Park's date goes down in flames when the girl faints, and he realizes he's still in love with Morgan. And to top it off, 2 revelations. Leah discovers she's pregnant, and Alan finds Perez passed out on the floor from an overdose. 3 months later, the landscape has changed. Lim is walking with a cane, but but ignoring the marriage proposal. Perez returns from rehab, 92 days sober and bound by strict rules, with Alan as his supervisor. The atmosphere is glacial. He asks for a new supervisor, making it clear he needs space. Sean and Leah go for an ultrasound with their hearts in their throats. Her uterus is thin, threatening to rupture. She's put on absolute bed rest, and Sean goes into desperate genius mode, designing a risky experimental surgery. Lim and Glassman are skeptical, but Leah trusts her husband. He drills them both to exhaustion. The surgery goes well, but later Leah's condition worsens, and she's rushed back to the OR. Glassman makes Sean wait outside. It's a close call, but they save both Leah and the baby, and the news that changes everything. It's a boy. Meanwhile, Resnick decides to have the embryos implanted, going it alone. Lim, taking one step at a time, asks her boyfriend to move in with her instead of getting married. Glassman, for his part, accompanies Resnick to the clinic, showing their partnership extends beyond the hospital. Sean and Leah attempt a baby moon with a general schedule, but things go off the rails when they witness a dog getting hit by a car. They rescue the pup, whom Leah names Buddy, and spend a fortune at the vet. At the hospital, a man arrives impaled by wood and metal, like a scene from a horror movie. Worse, he wakes up mid-treatment and rips out one of the rods. Elsewhere, Danny finds a Navy buddy with a gunshot wound and decides to remove the bullet at home so he won't violate his parole. She steals supplies, lies to Asher, and operates via video call, but the wound gets infected. Meanwhile, little Buddy's condition worsens, and the vet suggests euthanasia. Leah panics and forces Sean to confront his fears about being a father right there in the clinic's waiting room. Things explode when Lim discovers Danny's clandestine surgery. Furious, she brings the man to the hospital, saves his life, and fires Danny. To wrap things up, Glassman operates on Buddy and has a heart-to-heart with Leah about parenthood. In the end, the dog's family shows up to take him home. It hurts, but Leah finally sees the family she's building with Sean.
I really mean it.
Glassman's house is infested with termites, and with no other option, he moves in with Sean and Leah. Everything's fine until the most awkward moment possible. Leah walks into the bathroom naked, thinking it's Sean, and comes face to face with her father-in-law. At the hospital, Lim is coming down hard on Asher and Perez, who are both on probation. She wants to perform a high-risk surgery on a former patient. Asher finds a safer plan B, but she won't even listen. Perez keeps quiet to stay out of trouble. In the OR, Lim's plan fails, and it's Asher who saves the day by improvising. Lim swallows her pride and praises him. Resnick, focused on motherhood, is about to undergo another embryo transfer, but receives an offer for a promotion she can't refuse. She decides to do both. The night ends with 2 bombshells. Glassman's house catches fire, destroying the last memory of his daughter, and Perez, on the verge of relapsing, turns his back on his dealer and walks into the same church Alan attends. Sean is in neurotic dad mode, making a list of daycares before the baby is born, and comparing his 37 differences with Leah. He's so focused, he doesn't even notice Glassman is grieving his burned down house. The case of the day is a boy with a nail in his foot, but the real problem is his parents, who can't stop fighting and end up causing a brain infection in their son. The mother confides in Sean. Sometimes love isn't enough. The phrase sets off a red alert for him, and he runs to Glassman, afraid of repeating the pattern. His mentor gives him the straight talk. A baby changes everything. Meanwhile, Lim and Alan fight to save a patient who needs a lung transplant. The organ arrives damaged. Alan has a crazy idea, try to save the patient's original lungs. Lim agrees to the Hail Mary, and just when all seemed lost, the lungs respond. The surgery is a success. In the end, Leah takes Glassman to see the destroyed house. Sean arrives, and right on cue, the baby kicks. A small sign that maybe love is enough. Glassman emerges from his grief and goes full Grandpa of the Year mode, overdoing the preparations so much that an exhausted Sean and Leah kick him out, so he decides to move in next door. Sean reassures him he will always be the baby's grandfather. At the hospital, a boy with a rare brain disease makes Park reflect on being a father, while Sean, at first, only sees the medical puzzle. They devise a groundbreaking surgical solution, and Sean surprises everyone by bandaging the boy's teddy bear, showing a flash of empathy. Jordan treats her own grandmother and clashes with Lim, but ultimately finds the solution for the case and, inspired, creates an online mentorship program. Spurred by this wave of self-improvement, Danny finally confronts his tardiness and starts a Narcotics Anonymous group within the hospital itself. A patient named Sonia has a pregnancy that's basically a game of Russian roulette for her and the baby. Morgan thinks is the safest option. Jordan disagrees. To convince Sonya to fight, Jordan reveals her own past and talks about an abortion she had. On another front, Park runs into Joe, the man who destroyed his marriage. Torn between saving the man and letting fate take its course, he listens to Morgan's advice and finally forgives him, freeing himself from the past. And out of nowhere, Jared reappears, now a concierge doctor, bringing the world's 5th richest man as his patient. Sean discovers tapeworm larvae in the magnate's brain. Impressed, the billionaire offers a $100 million donation. Jared, inspired, asks to return as a resident. Lim accepts, but as a first year. The billionaire, pissed about losing his private doctor, tears up the check.
And this is what happens when you poach my employees.
In the end, the friends give Sean a sports car, but the joy is short-lived. He receives a notice that he's being sued for malpractice. The lawsuit lands like a bombshell. Bob Patton, a man whose hand Sean amputated, is accusing him of malpractice. Even Park questions if the amputation was truly necessary. Everyone suggests settling, but Sean wants to go to trial. He hires Joni DeGroot, a brilliant lawyer who also has OCD, making every interaction a challenge. It's a rough start, but Joni turns the tables in court by exposing Bob's lack of remorse for the accident he caused. Sean takes the stand, explaining his logic and his past with brutal honesty, and wins the case. Afterwards, Joni shares her story. Her OCD started when her father died. Her boss, Janet, pulled her out of the crisis and inspired her to become a lawyer. To close, Sean and Joni go to analyze the amputated hand for 100% certainty, a test he had postponed to avoid giving the prosecution ammunition during the trial. A kid named Carter is born with an inverted heart, and the case falls to Park, Asher, and Lim. The mother, who had abandoned him, tries to reconnect, and after a complex surgery, they manage to fix the boy's heart and the family's relationship. In another case, Jared, desperate to prove his worth, cuts corners and clashes with Sean while treating a little girl with a brain tumor. He successfully convinces the girl to have the surgery, and everything goes well. But as he's closing, he notices something unthinkable. Glassman forgot 2 sutures. Sean's alarm bells go off. Meanwhile, Asher discovers that Jerome is HIV positive and never told him. The revelation hurts him, but after witnessing the Carter family's drama, he rethinks his priorities. They reconcile and make a pact to have no more secrets, sealed with a game of truth or dare. Sean practically stands guard at the elevator door, firing questions at Glassman about the surgical error. He gets shut down but doesn't give up. He prints out all of his mentor's surgical reports from the last 3 months. The stack of paper is enormous. He explains to Leah that he needs to know if it was a slip-up or the start of something worse. Meanwhile, Jared tries to fit in and invites the group for karaoke. In one case, Daphne has dislocated her knee for the 2nd time, and her daughter Orion is carrying the weight of the world. They discover the real problem is massive tonsils causing sleep apnea and even heart failure in the mother. In another room, Sean treats a patient with long COVID symptoms and a rare heart condition. The karaoke night is a bust and gets cut short by an emergency. In the end, both patients improve, and Leah helps Sean admit what he's really feeling. Fear of losing a father figure just as he's about to become a father. He goes to Glassman and asks him to get an MRI. A patient arrives at the hospital practically sliced in half by a metal plate. Andrews wants to amputate everything from the waist down, but Lim fights to save the man. Jared, who's on the case, walks on eggshells due to some past guilt, but he and Danny devise a brilliant plan and manage to save the patient's legs. Outside of surgery, Danny admits he's jealous of Jared's growing closeness with Jordan. Meanwhile, Morgan bonds with Eden, a baby with Turner syndrome whose mother died in postpartum. She gets so involved that she even postpones her fertility appointments to stay with the girl. Elsewhere, Glassman's MRI comes back clean. It's not cancer. They celebrate by assembling the baby's crib in a sweet father-son moment. But then Glassman fumbles a simple step in the assembly. A small mistake, but one that raises a giant red flag. Something is not right. Andrew's friend, a devout carpenter, arrives with his body covered in lesions. The man is so religious that he becomes the perfect target for Asher's venting, who ends up offending Jerome and creating a rift in their relationship. The carpenter's surgery is successful, but he dies later later from a blood clot, leaving everyone devastated. At least Asher apologizes to Jerome, and they make up. The episode's core, however, is the silent duel between Sean and Glassman. Sean decides to become his mentor's shadow, monitoring his every move. Glassman, to prove he's fine, chooses a highly complex brain surgery and executes it flawlessly. But Sean spots the flaw. It's not in the technique, but in the conversation with the patient. His executive function is failing. In parallel, after several failed attempts by social services, Morgan decides to adopt baby Eden. With all the evidence in hand, Sean shows Lim a scan. Glassman had a mini stroke, and the damage is permanent. Lim, with a heavy heart, makes the decision. Glassman can no longer operate. Lim tries to pull Glassman from surgery, and he threatens to sue everyone. They reach a compromise. Sean, Jordan, and Danny treat a man who, after a head injury, developed a tumor that turned him into a better father. He refuses surgery, afraid of going back to being a jerk. Sean, swallowing his pride, asks Glassman for help convincing the patient, but his constant surveillance irritates his mentor. Lim takes over supervision, and the inevitable happens. Mid-surgery, Glassman has a blank moment. He forgets the next step and leaves the room, defeated. The truth Sean so feared is confirmed in front of everyone. On another floor, Andrews and Park care for a little boy with terminal cancer. When all plans fail, the father accepts the end. To fulfill the boy's last wish, Andrews builds a Christmas market inside the hospital. Morgan, meanwhile, fumbles with motherhood, but finds her rhythm with Park's help. Chaos erupts. Danny, Jared, and Jerome are in a serious accident. Danny is in critical condition and refuses painkillers because of his addiction. The pain is so intense that Jordan is forced to medicate him against his will. In the end, he forgives her but decides to return to Texas to recover near his family. They say goodbye in a bittersweet encounter. Asher brings Sean a case that ends in tragedy, with the patient dying suddenly on the table, leaving him shattered. Lim recruits Glassman for a case of internal decapitation and simultaneously pressures him to make peace with Sean. Morgan, overwhelmed, quits, but Park chases after her and proposes they raise Eden together as a family. Upstairs, the board gives Andrews an ultimatum: his job or his love for Nurse Villanueva. He chooses love and hams in his badge. And in the episode's climax, Sean and Leah's baby is born, Stephen Aaron Murphy.
Congratulations.
Oh, I can't believe you're finally here, Peanut.
Glassman doesn't show up at the hospital but sends an embroidered blanket, a silent declaration of love for his grandson. 2 weeks later, Sean and Leah's house is pure newborn chaos. The tension with Glassman still hangs in the air. Little Eden, Morgan's daughter, takes a turn for the worse and needs another surgery. At the same time, a heart becomes available for another baby, but the organ might be disqualified. It's 2 babies and 1 miracle on the line. Sean, pulling an all-nighter, has a brilliant idea: a domino transplant. Baby Jack gets the new heart, and they use the valves from Jack's old heart to fix Eden's, a crazy plan that saves them both. At the hospital, Lim and Glassman are named interim co-presidents to no one's surprise. Jared and Jordan finally make peace after Danny's departure. At the end of the day, Sean comes home to an exhausted Leah. The doorbell rings. It's Glassman. He comes in, holds little Steve, and introduces himself. Grandpa. Peace, finally, begins to be built.
Hey. I'm Grandpa.
Little Steve isn't gaining weight, and the recommendation to use formula makes Leah feel like the worst mother in the world. Up in the executive suite, co-presidents Lim and Glassman are fighting like Tom and Jerry. He cuts a deal that floods the hospital with medical students. She could only foresee disaster. We meet Charlie, an intern who's a huge fan of Sean, and Dominic, a former athlete who seems to be just checking a box. The main case is Rich, who is diagnosed with silicosis and needs a transplant. The situation turns into a family drama when Charlie, with no filter, reveals to the sick father that his daughter is a worker. In another case, Dominic suggests a bold surgery for an inoperable tumor, but faints at the sight of blood. Sean, annoyed by Charlie's mistake, demotes her to grunt work, but changes his mind after talking with Rich and understanding what it means to accept your children as they are. He convinces the father and daughter to make amends. Both surgeries are successful, but Charlie, overexcited, contaminates a sterile field and is kicked out of the OR. To close, Sean and Glassman finally make peace. The Cold War between Sean and his #1 fan, Charlie, only gets worse. worse. They take the case of a college student injured at a party, and Sean has zero patience for the newbie. Lim and Glassman, acting like divorced parents, give him conflicting advice on how to handle her. During surgery, Charlie insists on palpating an organ and finds something sharp. The puzzle reveals metal shards throughout the guy's body. Sean uses a giant magnet like a cartoon villain to remove the metal. Even after she, in a way, helped, he confronts her and says flatly that she doesn't have what it takes to be a surgeon. Outside the action, Morgan chooses Sean and Leah as Eden's guardians, and after a conversation, includes Park in her will. The night ends with Asher meeting Jerome's family at a party, in a rare moment of levity. A 38-year-old man has an accident and is diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. Her pregnant wife is devastated. Sean, however, refuses to accept it and discovers the real problem. It's not Alzheimer's, it's a jugular vein compression that surgery can fix. Meanwhile, Jordan treats a friend from her church choir with a tumor that threatens his hearing. This is Charlie's chance at redemption. Her research using AI helps plan a precise surgery that saves the man's hearing. Behind the scenes, Lim's controlling mother shows up unannounced, and Lim, with no time, outsources her to Glassman. Park and Morgan try to have a moment alone, but their house feels like Graham Central Station, and Sean and Leah realize they've barely spoken since Steve was born. They try to rekindle their romance but discover that life has changed. It sinks in. The past isn't coming back, but the future, with all its challenges, might be even better. Sean is forced to babysit his new intern Charlie, and they immediately take on the case of a 14-year-old girl with morbid obesity. Things turn sour when Charlie, with the subtlety of a bulldozer, lays out all the surgical risks to the girl's face. The mother and daughter back out, and Sean explodes. To fix her blunder, Charlie opens up about her own condition and forms a bond with the patient, who agrees to the surgery. But in the OR, Charlie messes up again, and Sean kicks her from the room. He goes to Glassman, ready to demand her dismissal, but gets blindsided. Charlie has already filed an HR complaint against him. Meanwhile, Park and Asher care for a 75-year-old man who wants to marry his Jewish fiancée with terminal cancer. Asher finds a rabbi for a hospital wedding. That night, Asher and the rabbi catch two guys vandalizing the synagogue. Asher comes out as gay and Jewish, confronts the attackers, and is beaten to death. The final scene cuts deep. Jerome waiting for him at a restaurant with an engagement ring in his pocket.
In the sunshine, who is calling?
The grief for Asher has barely set in when a driver plows his car into a crowd. It's a massacre. With half the team in shock, Lim takes charge, but the trauma overwhelms her, and she passes leadership to Sean. Lim's mother appears and reveals that her father hid his depression, fearing his daughter would be the same. Sean, in turn, pulls Glassman out of retirement for one last dance in the OR, and the old master delivers a flawless performance. When Sean becomes overwhelmed, it's Charlie who steadies him, helping save a patient. The gesture changes his opinion of her, and she withdraws the complaint. Jordan, consumed by rage, nearly refuses to treat the attacker, but a conversation with his mother helps her find a sliver of empathy. Dom, who is afraid of blood, becomes a medical MacGyver, improvising and proving his worth. In the end, there's no hierarchy. They are just friends, without their white coats, sharing the pain of losing Asher. Everyone's faith is tested when a volunteer kidney donor claims to be Jesus Christ. Jordan, still grieving, has no patience for the Messiah. Sean, ever the skeptic, debunks the miracle. The man has a tumor causing delusions. After surgery, Jesus reverts to being Carl and backs out of the donation, but changes his mind when he sees the family's desperation. Meanwhile, Park and Jared treat a man who refuses brain surgery if it means becoming quadriplegic, until Jerome, in deep mourning, gives him a reality check. Glassman treats Hannah, an addict who reminds him of his daughter, while also receiving grim news about his own health. To ease the tension, Leah and Morgan fight over a nanny, and Sean's solution is brilliant. Hire the nanny to start a daycare at the hospital, but the episode ends with a gut punch. Sean notices signs of autism in little Steve. Sean goes into full father detective mode. Steve isn't babbling, is mesmerized by fans, and makes little eye contact. For Sean, the diagnosis is clear: autism. He's already demanding MRIs and specialists. Leah panics and asks for Tom. She wants to enjoy her baby before putting a label on him. The tension explodes. He advocates for early intervention. She feels like a terrible mother, but eventually agrees to the tests. At the hospital, a boy with a functional third arm needs surgery, and his parents are at war over which arm to remove. In the end, the decision is purely technical. In another case, an astronaut just back from space returns with his body completely wrecked and a drastic personality change, which is explained by a side effect of his time in space. And Lim, to save Hannah from an overdose, crosses every ethical line and begins administering controlled doses of oxycodone to the addict, acting as both doctor and dealer. Claire is back, but the news is terrible. Breast cancer. Sean, Jared, and Charlie take her case, and the reunion is heavy. Meanwhile, Lim treats a man who was struck by lightning and now has a brain tumor. During his awake surgery, he plays the guitar to guide the doctors, turning the operating room into a survival concert. Behind the scenes, Glassman continues to treat the addict Hannah in secret, and the emotional toll is destroying him. Sean finds out, intervenes, and using his own history with his mentor, convinces Hannah to seek real help. The past also comes rushing back for Claire and Jared. They kiss, but the moment is broken when she collapses.
Claire? Claire.
To balance the drama, Park and Morgan finally get married in a simple ceremony at the bar where they first met. But the night ends with the worst news possible. Glassman reveals to Sean that his cancer is back, and this time, it's terminal. The verdict is brutal. Glassman has 3 to 6 months to live. Sean goes into complete denial, searching for miracle cures. Glassman refuses, already at peace with his fate. Claire's situation deteriorates drastically. A super-resistant infection puts her in a coma and forces the amputation of her left arm. In a desperate move, Sean and Charlie create an experimental treatment, but the FDA blocks it. That's when Glassman, in his last great act as a mentor, takes the risk, administers the treatment to Claire, and saves not only her life, but Sean's career. Only then does Sean accept the inevitable. We flash forward. Sean, now chief of surgery, gives a speech that is practically a TED Talk. We see everyone's future. He and Leah have a daughter. Morgan and Park have adopted more children. Jared and Claire, as well as Jordan and Danny, are married. Lim is on a humanitarian mission in Ukraine, and Charlie has become an attending physician at the hospital. It's the perfect finish line, with Sean at the peak of his career, surrounded by everyone who helped him get there.